All right, give me about 10 seconds and we'll be all set to go.
Let the administration and my fellow board members know about this decision, but I did want to speak directly to the community, and essentially all of the families in the district, and let you know.
All right, thank you so much. You're all set.
Okay, thank you.
Happy holiday.
Okay. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Orange Board of Finance. Today's Monday, December 21st. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:10. Since everybody's screen probably looks different than mine, well, I'll introduce everyone. We have Joe Nuzzo, Jim Leahy, Kevin Moffitt, Pat Romano, PJ Shanley, John Cifarelli, and Deb Satonic. And I'm Kevin Houlihan. Okay, so we'll move on to item number 3. Oh, well, I forgot the whole in accordance with Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7B. Regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting will be held remotely with no in-person attendance, and the meeting will be broadcast live on OGAT. Sorry about that. Okay, so item number 3, discussion and revote to correct the error in the motion from September meeting for loading dock repairs needed for Turkey Hill School. That was my fault. I had thought that the chairman of the Board of Ed told me it was Peck Place, and clearly it was not. It was Turkey Hill. So, John, what do we need to do there exactly?
I would just do the same motion and make it a correction of the September motion to repair the loading dock at Peck Place School, to change it to Turkey Hill School loading dock.
That motion's actually at the top of page 2 of our minutes. If somebody wants to make that motion.
Why don't I make that, Kevin, since I was the one who made the last one incorrect.
Okay. And motion by Jim. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, unanimous. Thank you. Item number 4, Amity update. Mr. Nuzzo.
Well, good evening, everyone. We had a couple of AFC meetings, one on November 9th and then one last Monday. Do we want to talk? I mean, how much time, Kev, do you want me to spend? I mean, is the agenda pretty packed? It's up to you. I mean,
No, I think this is going to be.
This is an important item,
This
Joe.
is going to be the most important thing we talk about this week,
Yeah.
I think.
all right. So Jim, you want to go to the November 9th packet? Would you like to share your screen, Jim, or you want me to share mine?
Well, you can do whatever you want. I'm agreeable, but right now I'm looking for another file. But what's your?
Right, so the November 9th, big discussion was about the executive summary of the pension fund, sick and severance, and the Oped trust. So let me go over and then talk a little bit about some capital projects, the roof projects, and the Orange Middle School modular demolition, and some monthly financials. The big thing on the November meeting was the pension fund performance. So let me go to that with you guys. I know we've seen it. I know Jim emailed it out to all of us. But let me just get to the results here, to the pension. I'm trying to work I have 2 laptops here. So I only have one screen, and you obviously have 2. So I have both November and December open. But November I can't share. I don't have all of the technological capabilities that I do in my office, but nonetheless, let me get to the performance here.
Maybe Jim could share it.
Yeah, if Jim wants to get there on the November AFC. Let's just see here. So he had an interesting chart here. Talked about the actual investment returns for Connecticut municipal pension plans going back to 2014. He talked about a return of 14.5%. And then that was in 14, 15 had 2.4%, and in 16 was just below 0. The 17 return was almost 11%, 18 return was 7%, and 19 was 5.7% on the returns for municipal pension plans. So not bad overall. Okay, we don't have the numbers through 2020 yet. That was overall. But now let me get to our specific.
Joe, what are the, is it a calendar year or is it?
Yeah, there was a calendar year, PJs, yes.
Okay.
And that was on page 10 of the AFC package of fiduciary investment advisors. Just the investment performance overall. Calendar year, yes. So not bad. I mean, what do you think we'll see, Pete, for the end of this year for 2020 overall?
Point to point, it should be a positive year in a diversified portfolio. I mean,
Yeah.
January, February, March, April were atrocious. S&P was down 35%, but it's recovered all of that and then some.
And that's,
We're at historic highs right now.
Yeah, so our performance should be okay, year end. But let me get to the summary section over here, capital markets. All right, so when we get to, let me just get to the pension here. It's a little hard because I didn't print everything out. I mean, I don't have hard copies of all of this. We're trying to work electronically with everything. So it's just taking me a few extra seconds to get over here. Here we go. All right, pension plan review. All right, so the Amended pension as of September 30th had $14.6 million in there total. And yeah, $14.6 million in there. And the quarter performance at actually 5.8%. Year to date was 3.8 through September. In July 2020 to September 2020, 5.8%. The 1 year return was 10%. 3 years, 7.6, 5 years, 8.9. So overall, very good. And since inception was 6.4%. Inception was January 1st of 2007. Overall, they've done pretty well for us in managing our money at Amity. Just get down to the Oped. All right, so the Oped review, we have 2.7 million in the fund, and the performance there, quarter 5.2, year to date 2.2, and the 1 year return was 7.9, called 8%, and the 3 years return was 6%, 5 years 7.7%. So overall, still good return for us on our investment mix. And then going down to the sick and severance fund review, that fund has $715,000 in it. And the performance there, quarter 4.6%, year to date 5%, the 1 year 10, 3 year 7.3, 5 year 8%, 7 year 7%. So again, pretty good overall performance there. The second big topic that we talked about was involving the capital projects. One was the roof, which I know we've talked about and have heard on numerous occasions. Let me just.
That's the 15-year-old roof. That's still pretty much fine, right?
Yeah, let me get to the capital projects 2021. We have a new gentleman, Steve Martoni, who works with Amity now. He met with some representatives from Tremco Roofing to review the roof condition. And he said it's recommended that we proceed with a thermal scan of 135,000 square feet of the roof that was restored in 2012, as well as another 19,000 square feet at the high school. So they're going to scan, the scan of the 2012 project will indicate if the roof warranty can be extended for 5 additional years beyond the 2022 existing warranty. or if another restoration is possible or full replacement is needed. So we'll know soon how that looks and if they'll give us the extra 5-year warranty on that.
A roof that was replaced in 2016, we're talking about
2012, Jim.
2012. So
It was restored in 2012. It's restored, restored, not replaced, but restored.
Is that the middle school or the high school, Joe?
All of the roofs, it was 135,000 square feet of roofs at middle schools. And then there was another 19,000 at the high school. So the 135 square feet of the roofs were of the middle schools.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, I guess we did a major upgrade and restoration in 2012. So they want to see if that can last for 5 more years or if it needs full replacement. We'll know that soon. And he said there's a 6,300 square foot area identified with crumbling capstone and possible water intrusion that's deemed to be restored immediately. I believe that one is in the high school. And so we need to figure out what's going to happen here cost-wise. The initial estimate for the thermal scan is $8,750. And these charges will be paid from the capital and non-recurring account. The AFC and the Board of Ed approved a transfer for the 2012 section of roof of $495,000 back in September. But again, we're not sure how much of that needs to be spent yet until we get this scan and get the results from the scan. So we'll see how that goes. We'll sit tight and wait a little bit for that.
Because that's money they held off from the surplus and moved it right at the end.
Yeah, the 1%, basically, give or take 1%, yeah.
Hey, Joe,
I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead.
did they replace someone in the facilities department? Is that the guy you said?
Well, the new gentleman is, Jim Sison retired.
Oh.
So the new gentleman is Steve Martoni. I've seen him a couple of times since at our meetings. He's come and given us facilities updates. Seemed like a good guy, seems capable, competent. Jen Byers and Terry Loomis seem to be happy with him and his capabilities so far.
Where was he before coming to Amity?
No, Jim, I don't know. I don't know if we really got a resume much on him. I think he was in another school district, but I'm not sure.
Was that school district nearby, or was it?
I think he was in Connecticut.
Huh?
Yeah, I think he's from Connecticut. Yes.
Steve Martoni, Martoni.
Toni. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so that we discussed that. So we'll know what the roof results look like soon. Now, the modular building discussion centered on Amity Middle School, Bethany. Let's see here. So, the current fiscal year operating budget designates funds for roof replacement on the modular buildings at Amity Middle School, Bethany. Steve reviewed the condition of the modulars at both middle schools. And the principal of Amity Orange, Kathy Burke, had requested that Mr. Martoni inspect the modular in Orange since it appeared to be deteriorating to an unsafe condition. So the facilities committee reviewed it and at the November 2nd, 2020 meeting, and they were recommending that the modular at Amity Middle School be demolished. I guess it was old. It was old storage items in there. And
I think they were there when I was at Amity.
right, Pete.
Probably the same items also.
Had your name spray painted on the wall. So those were, he estimated the cost of the demolition was $8,000. We're going to get some quotes to do that and utilize some of the funds from the Bethany line item on the roof replacement. So we made a motion to approve that for the demolition there. Those are the two capital items that we spent time on. And the financials, wasn't much happening there through September. Again, still surplus, of course. let's jump over to the December AFC package. The audited statements have come out. Now, Jim, can you get it? Can you show that on the screen to everyone for the
Sure.
December meeting, please?
Okay, let me get them open and then I'll share the screen.
Jim, the magic of sitting at your desk, Mr. Martoni was the Region 16 Facilities Director. So that's Seymour, Prospect, I think Beacon Falls, that school district area.
Okay, so he worked in the Valley School District.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Joe, I have the Word document and the Excel document open, and I think it would be useful for us to.
All right, so
You guys have them at your desk. You might do just as well to have them open, or you can just look along with us. So, Joe, which one do you want to look at first?
you want to look at the financials, the audited financials?
Excel document?
Well, actually, it's a PDF. So we have the federal and state single audits for June 30. That was in the AFC packet itself.
By the way, for record, because we're going to be having a discussion with Amity leadership, including the chairman of the Amity board, who's from our town. I'd like to remind everyone on this call in this town that the first thing we used to get back in 2005 when I requested it was this Excel document, which then a little later we had the Word document. It was only until years later that this Amity pack would come out. It used to be that the Excel document would come out on about Thursday before the Monday meeting. Then the Excel document would come out on Thursday with the Word document. And sometimes it would nudge into Friday. As you all know from my note last Monday morning, when the meeting was held at 5 o'clock and those two documents were sent out, I believe at either 10 o'clock or 12:37. I noted it in my email to you, which I copied John Belfonte on, the chairman of the Amity Board of Education. And only later was this meeting packet put together, years later. And now in that meeting packet, they also put the unable to manipulate. In other words, it's just a PDF. You're unable to do your own little assessments and Excel particularly work to kind of do your own research. So you can imagine my surprise this morning when, after requesting that I get some help to get these meeting things, not at 12:37 on the day that you're going to have the meeting at 5 o'clock, which if you're going to have input, since it's a meeting only by Zoom, the input has to be received at 2 p.m. I said to John to help us make sure that we get this document Thursday or Friday. So again, you can imagine my surprise was I informed that the meeting packet, which is the non-able to work with PDF document, came out on Friday, and that has the material in it. So I'll be responding in kind. I just wanted to let all of you know that that little background thing was going on. I'm a little tired from this administration, not John, of sending out this material late. And as all of you recall from last May, when we decided to give input and was disallowed from getting input into the budget process that was going on at that point in time, which was eventually spent $1.5 million of the surplus, which we'll talk about later, that we are not able to get this material in a timely basis in the way it was always done back in the day. In fact, back in the day before involved right now was connected to it. So with that in mind, Joe, which document, you can see on the screen my files there. Do you know which, the AFC 12/14/20 meeting packet?
Yes, yes.
It would be helpful if you could direct me to like a section or a page, Joe, or what I'm trying to find. One way of doing it is to go to the first page, and sometimes it gives you kind of a roadmap as to where this material is. And I don't know if you can read mine, so I'll put it at 100%. And then maybe you could read it even off my sheet, Joe, and then kind of direct us together where we want to go.
Okay. Let me see something.
Before we go, because I don't want to go through an audit report for Amity if there's just things that are summarized somewhere. Because, we know what our audit report looks like. It's, it's a couple hundred pages or close to it. So they had their, I see it says.
Yeah, page 5, and the next item is page 112. So it's probably the entire audit report, Kevin. Yeah.
I mean, the audit was clean as is usual. I mean, I'm looking at, Jim, I'm looking at page 7 of the AFC packet, which talks about the audit from Mahoney Sable CPAs. And again, nothing major there. The one thing that I just noticed in their verbiage is that they do say they audited in accordance with the auditing standards of GAAP, the GAS. And then they like to say, we consider the district's internal control over the financial reporting, but as a basis for designing audit procedures that are appropriate in the circumstances for the purposes of expressing our opinions on the financial statements, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the district internal control. So I kind of laugh when I read that. It's like, well, we're paying you to do an audit, but then they're saying, well, we're not really expressing opinions on the effectiveness of our internal control. So what are we hiring you? What are we paying you for? Just kind of. So then they say, accordingly, we do not express an opinion on the effectiveness of the district's internal control as a catch-all should something that they missed go awry.
Kevin, what does that mean to us who do not do this for a living? Do you know?
I do not do any governmental audit work.
Okay.
It's just standard language for the most part, in my
In case they
opinion.
missed something. Yeah.
Because you have to consider the internal control structure when you're picking your tests, what you're going to test, segregation of duties and all that. But I think it's just a standard disclaimer that they consider the internal controls, but they're not expressing an opinion as to their effectiveness or whatnot.
Okay.
They're not doing a forensic audit. They're just doing I don't know if there's different categories, but I know it's not forensic, obviously.
Yeah. So anyways, I find that I kind of laugh when I read that. You're paying us to do an audit, but we're not really, issuing our opinion on the effectiveness of the controls, but that's fine.
Yeah, that's a little audit humor.
It's kind of a CYA. It's kind of a CYA.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Exactly what it is.
That's all it is.
Okay, what else we got, Joe?
I mean, there's really nothing major there. As you know, we always have great audits. There was no compliance issues, no control issues. There really wasn't anything really much to talk about here, unless anybody saw something that they wanted to discuss, but there really wasn't much.
You mean on the audit?
On the audit itself, yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
audit is.
There's not much to talk about. It was all went well.
Okay.
Let's just see here. And do we want to go down to, let's just see, go back up to here. All right, so let's go, let me keep scrolling down here. So let's go past this audit, which is pretty intense and detailed. Let's see here. Let's see, what's the last page of this audit?
Probably 111.
It's way down here. I know, Kevin, so there's a lot here. All right, so again, there's not much to talk about and as far as the audit goes. Let me just get to the end of this here. All right, so. So after page, so page 111. Down there. All right, so let's move on to the next topic there. We talked about returning funds to the member town. That's on page 112 of the AFC.
Right.
I think we know what's been coming back to us. There's there's 1.95 million of unused funds. Our portion is 992.
Yeah. Okay. That was expected.
Yeah, that's expected. Nothing new there.
992 or 1010?
1010.
Yeah. There were two pieces, Joe.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm looking at the first piece. Yeah, 992 is the first piece, and the 1010. Yeah, that's the total.
A chunk of change beyond that. Yeah.
The 1010 is the total coming back to us on page
Right.
113.
Correct.
And that was a big, the news and one of the topics that we discussed briefly. And then we talked about the budget update on page 114, which is always, again, you look at the initial numbers. So the initial budget request from staff and the department leaders came in at 7.07%, or 3.6 million over the current year's budget. Could you imagine that? That's just hard to comprehend.
Yeah, we're going to have a significant commentary about this page.
Yeah.
I think Kevin and John, if I miss my guess, be on budget agenda topic number 9. Is that correct?
That's where it can be discussed, absolutely.
So, Joe, why don't you hold anything about the AFC update regarding this page, and frankly, anything having to do with budget updates for future years till we get to topic number 9. That would be my recommendation.
All right. So I'll hold off on page 114 of the AFC packet till we get to number 9. That's fine.
Okay. Now, when we get to this stuff, we can go to the Excel file, which is what I was talking about earlier. Are you good with that, Joe?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so I'm going to flip over now from there to the Excel file. So I'll let you have first dibs on whatever comments you want to, present to the.
You want to look at the Excel, the expense
Yeah.
report first?
Is that up there now, Joe, or no? It's on my
Let me
screen.
see a minute, Jim. Yeah, I need to open that up here. There we go.
On
Okay.
the Zoom screen, maybe? Or,
Yeah.
or if you want to do it.
All right. So on that Excel spreadsheet, Jim, what you have here, it's a little hard to see.
Well, let me
So
just
we
give it
have
another
the-
boost there. How about that?
Another boost, so we can let's boost that up a
Is
little
that
bit.
better? Maybe if I can't do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Well, maybe I can give you a boost here, Joe.
Go ahead, Jim. Yeah, you can read it. You can see it better. Go ahead.
Do whatever you want. What it's saying here is a couple of things. First of all, I'd like the team to be, and I think this is going to be one that's going to be important to us during this year. Let's go and understand all the tabs. Okay, just one time. Give me 30 seconds on tab. Here's the end of the year fiscal 220. That's the fiscal year 20. Now, that is their assessment of where they stood at the end of the fiscal year. As you can see, it says their net balance, or what we would term surplus over their budget, is 1,950,777. Everybody can see that? Yes?
Yep.
In yellow?
Yep.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. That's a combination of favorability in terms of your expenses, as you can see here, and your revenue, as you can see here. And you have your subcomponents. So this is a summary page. And this is something that changes, for example, to make sure we understand all the columns. And this would be helpful if people are watching at home, because we're going to be looking at this one a lot this year. A lot. What it's showing you is what your actual spending was in 2018-19. Then it's going to show you the budget for 19-20. And then each month as you go through, this happens to be the end, a column from the prior month to the end of the year, which means it was May. So this is a column for the prior month, in this case, May. Then what happened as a change from whatever you had for a category from that prior month, and then what your end of the year or your current month forecast would be. And again, this changes. The main thing changes, the end of year thing will change. For example, right now, all right, when we get to this tab over here, you're going to see this one say October and this one say November. Now, I know I'm doing that for the folks at home, but I'm just making sure everybody is 100% up to the same speed. And then what the variance is and whether it's favorable or unfavorable. So what you have here is a deficit, a surplus of 1,950,777. So says this document. What we're talking about in each month when we get, so that's the end of a fiscal year. And then you have what happened in June, what happened in July, what happened in September, October, and here November for that particular fiscal year, which I'll slide back up because you have, as you would look at it as if you were printing it, and I'll just kind of jump to this so that everybody can see. Just a structure, not any of the details. What you have is always a 4-page document. The first page is the summary of both the revenues and expenses. And then you have a page of all the details of the revenues. So you go back and you say, oh, I've got 4 or 5 categories of revenues, but each of the categories of revenues has its own subcategory of revenues. Then you have 2 pages that look like that. Salaries, benefits, purchase services under all the expenses, and the same thing for all the other types of expenditures underneath. So it's always a 4-page summary document that prints out nice and easy, all right? But you have your summary of all of those 4 pages back at the first page, which I'll now go back to. So what you have here is saying to us the following. Right at this moment in time, Board of Finance in orange, what we have here is a favor. Here's our budget, for example, in the revenue category. Here's our budget. And here's where we stand on that budget. If you're over on revenue, that's favorable. So that's a good news. All right. And on total of expenditures, you have a budget 5784. Where you used to stand in October, you were that amount. It's gone up by 103,000. So here's where we stand, 5707. And you go whip back over here and you say, oh, it's under what I had budgeted. So I have a favorability rating over here as well. So once again, you're looking at 2 major categories. And those 2 things, the difference between those 2 will be a favorability here and in expenditures and a favorability up here in revenues. And these 2 numbers add up to this particular number here. So that's where we stand. So it says in November, 4 or 5 months in. I don't want to steal all your thunder, Joe, but that's the summary. Fair enough. And I want you to have a chance to weigh in as well, because you're listening to what you hear up there.
Yeah, well, the trend is obviously positive at 172 year to date through November, but it's been trending like that for years. So, and then for them to come in at an initial budget of 7% is like, does anybody understand where we are and what we've come through the last 9 months? It's hard to comprehend. But I don't know. I mean, they don't get enough resistance from the Amity board on their budgets, and even in the toughest of years, they got approval. So I don't know. I mean, it's just I don't know where this starts to change and where the mentality changes now that you have extra expenses that were pandemic related. The economics have not fallen out of all of this yet. That dust has not settled economically with the governments. I mean, as deficits, as we know,
Joe, what have you been hearing about extra expenses because of the pandemic? Because we have not been privy to that.
Yeah, I thought, Jim, there was a number of $700,000 of extra expenses that are in there.
They have a lot of extra expenses in the transportation and the outplacement tuition for the special needs students. And they more than made up for that on the salary saving side, which is why there's not a deficit and there's still a surplus. I forget, I was told of some heavy, PPE expenditures, but some of that's going to come back from the state. How much, I don't know. John probably knows more about that than I would for, how you get reimbursed, but there is definitely going to be some money from the state to reimburse some of those costs.
Here's what I'm observing when I go back from the top. Remember I said earlier, the first page was the summary page. That's what we're looking at here. So I'm sliding down. So I'm going to just bypass the revenue side for now. And I'm going to start looking at the details on the expenses side. I see some favorability here on the salaries. And when I kind of march down, a couple of things hit me. I'm not seeing much difference. I'm seeing one thing here, other purchase services. So I'm going to highlight that one because it isn't so much that $85,000 is a large increase, but it's double your budget. It's almost double what you had last month, and it brings you up to significantly higher than your budget. So you can see the unfavorability. So I don't know how you guys go about it. What this leads me to do is to immediately go to their Word document and say to myself, let me take a peek at line item 25 in the expense side to see what they're telling me about that, because I don't understand it. I'm sure it's right, but I just don't understand it. So here's line item 25. Now, maybe I'm off by a line item, so I might have to take some time to kind of.
Yeah, it's 26, I think, is the one there.
26. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kevin. Thank you. Other purchase services. So then I say I can't particularly read it, so I'll see what it says. So now I'm reading it. All right. This has to do with the cafeteria fund to cover operations to the losses in the program. Joe, I thought we put 100,000 into this extra from last year, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So this would be over and above that for
To
some.
cover the shortfall.
That was last
People
year's short.
not buying lunches, yeah.
And
Last
now they
year's
got the
short-
same thing.
Yeah. There's a shortfall because they say the kids don't enjoy the food, so they don't buy it. So it's like, of course, it costs us money because of that. And they get the free lunches, so I'm not sure the exact percentage, but some free lunches. But I think it's a deficit that you're not getting enough kids to buy into the lunch program because they don't like the food. The quality is not good.
Now the kids aren't even eating there. They're dismissed
Right.
before lunchtime.
You would think
And
there
they're
should be
available.
savings. You would think
Yeah,
there would be
they're-
savings there. You would think.
You would think they're available to the kids if they want them, but most of those kids are bolting out of there as soon as they can on the days that they're there, because they're not all there at the same time.
What I get from this conversation is that there's an understanding of what's going on. What I don't get from either the conversation or the words that I see here, I see $100,000 unfunded is included in this month's forecast. So I'm just trying to understand it. And I don't see where we have $100,000 in here. I see a number that's close to it, but I don't see the Excel document tying back to the Word document explicitly. Moving on, this is how I view and how I myself go through this document. other supplies, for example. You know, you can see it under supplies, again, it's gone up 100,000, 100,000. All right. It's a significant number from last month. I wish I knew. So the good news is, Kevin, keep it fair here. It's number 40. So we just go back to the Word document, right? And we say to ourselves, okay, what's going on in this particular case? And so we just slide down to number 40 and we say to ourselves, oh, here it is. Maybe it's not number 40. Supplies, the forecast reflects reimbursement from the Coronavirus Relief Fund, $50,000. Previously 150 favorable. I must be on the wrong one again, Kevin, so you're going to have to help me out.
No, it's the right one, the 58.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, it was 40.
They're saying that 162. The last month's favorable was wrong.
Okay. And so the difference between, okay, thank you, Kevin. So as you read the two, I might have wrote it differently. I'd be kind of wanting to understand where this number came from, or how come 361 became 472. But you're saying the increase of 111 is the difference between these two right here. That's what I'm hearing from you. Okay. Okay. Well, here's one that isn't so obvious. And it's our friend, medical and dental insurance. Remember that one from other years? We have a budget of $4.2 million. Notice, exactly on pace. So let's take a peek. Not surprisingly, maybe some of us have already taken a peek. So let's take a peek together. This is the month data for the entire year, or most of it, that goes into this number. It has a budget for 4.6 million. It's not exactly this number here, and but it's the same type of situation. What we do know is that the two are very much related. And now we go here, and you can see that after 5 months, we are almost $600,000 favorable in this particular account. And you can see where we have numbers budgeted over the next 7 months. This past month, we've had our smallest variance. And there used to be the saying that it took a long time to receive the payments from the medical system. But as we've done our research, particularly PJ from your friend, who came and educated members of our board a few times, that time compression really is a lot less now than it used to be. Anyway, whether people are getting less doctor visits, we can definitely see that what we have here is a significant favorability. Now, they say the favorability here is forecast of 84.1%. You can see that right down here. Now, I just have a certain bit of issue with that. That looks at, it would be 84.1% if all of these future numbers exactly match the budget for those dates. In other words, we're kind of saying that our actuals for the future months will add up to 4,059,143. We don't know that. If you were to actually say how well we are running as of this moment, it would be the summary of these 5 budget numbers, this number here, and the 5 actuals divided by the sum of the 5 budgeted numbers, and you'd get a forecast more in the 65 to 70% of that range. Last month, I actually calculated it. But here again, when you go back to the Excel sheet, nada.
You know, that's where the big May, June next year surplus comes through.
Well, and that's why you could only have to go back to your end of the year tab and say, hey, I wonder what happened at the end of the year last year, right?
Well, Jim, can I interject for 1 second?
Yeah.
I'd rather be on the more conservative side. A lot of people were putting off non-essential procedures. that
Oh, yeah.
we maybe, coming into a season, the vaccine ramps up a little bit. Hopefully it's effective.
Mm-hmm.
People feel more comfortable going back to the doctor, and those expenditures are going to start ticking up.
They may or may not, PJ. I think there would be an indication
I
that
think they pick up. I agree with PJ, but I don't think they pick up enough that we eat up that 592. Those other months might have the claims being actual, and I could
Right.
see
I
something
agree
like
with
that
you,
happening.
Beth. I think that, that maybe the 84% is, on target if they start ticking up.
here's what I'm curious about. Every month we go through here, and every one of these things varies pretty much. Certainly the major ones varies based on what you know at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Except for those one particular one. And the one I'm talking about right now is medical and dental. It has stayed exactly where it is in light of this. Or you could say that argument, PJ, for any of these expenditures. Okay. And if you want to be conservative, fine. And Joe, what have we done for the medical reserve in terms of what percentage is that? Is it now at Amity?
Well, 25%, Jim. Up from 20% a couple of years back, and that's
And last year they put
a
it to
conservative
where?
number. 25.
They went up to 25, and then they used some of the surplus last year and made it 30.
Yes.
Right.
It's 30 right now.
That's correct.
Is it 30 now? It's 30. It's 30 now. 30. Is it 30 or 25? 30 seems high. Is it 30 for sure?
20 seems high to me.
20, yeah, 20 seems high.
Financial guy told us.
Is it?
No, what
okay,
happened
no,
was-
it was 30.
Yeah, it's 30.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So as we start discussing budgets, I did the following analysis, and I'd like to share it with you, and I'd like to share it. And if I made a mistake, I'd like you guys to educate me, but I'm going to tell you where I got my data, okay? The budget for 2019, as you see, is 49,548. You go back.
Actually, we can't see it because I can't see it at least.
It's on my screen, Pat, so if you're looking.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
well, you're right on
20.
top of it on my screen.
Yeah, you have to move. That's what I've been doing while I've been doing this. You have to move your people.
Okay,
Just slide your
I got
to
it.
another. I've been doing it.
There we go. Goodbye, folks.
Oh, you with me, Pat?
Yeah, got it.
I appreciate you doing that because I don't know what you're looking at. So I go back to here and I say, what was the budget for last year? And it says, I'm hearing a dog, 49,548,307 was the expenditure. So that's where I got that number. All right. You guys know where that came from?
Yeah.
They said the surplus, remember over here, they said that their surplus was 1950,777. So that's where I got that number. The additional spending, I sent this out to you guys, excuse me, a while back. It was, and I have the same problem, Pat, because I'm constantly moving my pictures around for the same reason that you were mentioning. All right. But back around end of the year surplus, there was a COVID-19 impact document you guys might remember.
Right.
And I'll boost this up so you can see it, Pat. And again,
I got it.
I wish I knew how to make my people go often.
There's a little plus and minus sign on there.
Yeah, I got that. Oh, on the people thing?
Yeah,
Can I do the minus?
yeah.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Kev. That's
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so there's that 100,000 for the cafeteria we were talking about. Here's that 1% capital non-recurring, both Kevin and Joe were talking about. Here were items. Remember, this is spending last year's money.
Yeah.
That should have gone back to the towns. And they're spending money that was cut out from what they wanted to do in this year's budget. And they're taking that 257,008 and spending it right then, last June. And there's various other things that they were spending money on. Okay. And it came up to about 1.5 million. So I took that number and I said to myself, okay, you spent that number, what I called additional spending. So your actual spending compared to your budget was what you called your surplus, that 1950, and less that 1498. So you just let it.
In addition.
Say what?
In addition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I subtracted them both, Kev. And
The surplus is 3.5.
yeah, that's what 3449 I got, or Excel got. I didn't hand do it. Does that sound about right for you, Kev?
Yeah, it's 3.5 million.
Yeah.
Okay. Which means that their surplus to budget was about 7%.
Right.
I think it's 6.96. So if you want to get 2 decimal points, some people feel more comfortable when you do that. So when you hear people tell you we only had a 2.49% budget increase from last year, that's last year for fiscal year 19, to this year, they are looking at that 49 number. They're not looking at the 46 number. So the increase from budget to budget was, yes, 1.236202, which was 2.49. Okay. But when you look about what they now have for a budget, the 50,784,509, which is sitting right over here in the budget column, and this number for the 46,099, which is sitting right up here, what you actually spent last year, you had an increase of 4,685,202 in your budget, comparing it to what you spent last year and what you budgeted for this year, which is a 10.2. And if you like 2 decimal points, we'll give it to you. Whoops, wrong one. 10.16% increase. So when we get to item 9, current year budget issues, we can pick up on knowing that this is the data when you assess the actuals to budget, but I don't want to get into item 9 now because we're still in the Amity update.
Well, I think we've had enough of Amity for now, since we're going to have it again in a little bit.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, Joe, are we good?
Yeah. You want me to do the Vice Chairman's report, Kevin?
Yes, sir. Item number 5.
Okay, thank you. This is the final of this. I wrote it about 3 or 4 times. I believe in October, I was going to give you an update. Then in November, I was going to give you an update, and now it's been delayed. And this just to summarize the fire truck challenge, and last time you'll hear about it from me. Again, summary, it's pretty much the same slides. The new information is at the bottom, but for those who happen to be seeing this for the first time, last May, the carnival got canceled for the summer, a big event here in Orange. If you're new to town, some people are, you might be checking out the Orange Town Action TV. Our volunteer fire department, we do not have a paid fire department. We have a volunteer fire department. If it's a different organization, they were going to be out 120,000 net just from not having the carnival. I talked to Jim Zioli, and we in the fire chief. I learned his name was Von Dumas, And we agreed to do this fire truck $50,000 challenge, thinking, wouldn't it be great if we could make one of the 2 payments annually for their new fire truck that they've had for a number of years, but still had think of it as a mortgage on it. So we created a site, we established some sponsorship levels, and we went rolling. We created a number of signs, tried to give it a boost across the community, develop some videos. Can't tell you enough the great support and capability for Rick Roberts, who lives in town, and also got some boosts from Orange Live, Channel 12, a number of articles in the New Haven Register, Channel 8, and just significant support from the Orangetown News. We tracked the donations daily. You guys were on the weekly updates that I did. I think there were 20, actually, I think there were 26 of them in all. And final tally was we outdid ourselves. We were very happy to see that the people in our town and others in businesses contributed $163,004 were already collected in the fire truck challenge. This is just a slide that we've used that, it's a big component of the Orange Volunteer Fire Department's revenue is this carnival. And that's carnival revenue unrelated to the raffle that comes with the carnival, they're kind of overlapping. So the various events were very much threatened, and that was the visual we tried to visualize on that. We used it, as I said to you guys, I just do it like I did one of the things at Sikorsky. We had a team charter, all our names were on it, and we sponsored it, as it says in the lower part of the screen, sponsored by the members of the Board of Education, as we agreed, not as the board itself.
Finance,
I'm sorry, Pat, go ahead.
Board of Finance.
What did I say, education?
Yeah.
Violation right there. Rick Roberts was helpful. In one way, he was helpful. He wrote a lot of our stuff, but it's about community, and I learned that more and more the more I learned about the Orange Volunteer Fire Department. I want to give a boost to PJ, who was the contact for the Democratic Town Committees, and PO Imparati, am I saying his name right?
PO.
On the Republican Town Committee. Because they were the part of the initial launch so that we kept it, everybody could support it. And that's what happened. And we had various ways of, civic groups, commissions, whatever, community groups and boards to support in ways they could. All right, we had the thing on the town website for a while, a button which has now been used by others now for good purposes. So it was a good add not only to the website here at the Orange Town website, but the national firm, when we talked to them to get them to see if to give it a boost to help us out, turned out that was a major feature that they're now advertising on all their features for their standard products given to do with towns. They do a lot of them across the country, it turns out. All right, and the nation status, there's the details. Let us stay there for a second. But as you can see, the GoFundMe actually did get above the $50,000 mark, 385 donors at an average of 327. There are $107,000, 957 from 255 checks on an average of 423. And we got some promotional money in, various events, $3,000, 81, and there's your details. And all of you, I know, were a part of a large group that got the weekly update. So I think we were pretty good in the control system on, and anybody could ask questions whenever they wanted. So that's the materials that you've seen before. There's a picture of the website. Now, one thing you haven't seen is this. I did a little analysis. I did this in the middle of October, and I didn't go back to it, but you're going to get the feeling. So let's take a peek at what we're seeing here. The blue is the GoFundMe, and the red is the checks. And what was happening, we got off to a great start with the GoFundMe, but you could see it would continue on kind of going up and up and up. but no major, the major boost happened in the early 5 weeks, I'd say. And there's reasons for that, and I can put the reasons on the graph in a minute. The checks started coming in,
We
though.
don't need to do that.
See. Now, remember, two things about the GoFundMe. The GoFundMe is kind of real time. So, if Pat, you put in a contribution, it's right there. The checks, you have to, I'll write a check. Then I got an envelope. I put it in the mail. All right. Gets to the P.O. box. Somebody for the Orange Volunteer Fire Department. Remember, they're volunteers. They'll get it, and then they'll bring it home, and then they'll put it in a pile, and then they have to get it to the treasurer. So it could be a 2-week process. So you have to think about that, because what you're seeing here is when the checks got actually deposited. So you kind of, in a sense, if you wanted to compare blue with red, you might have to move red back 2 weeks. But in any event, you can see the uptick significant here right in the July or early August time process. And then you kind of see it steady as she goes. And then we had a significant boost here at the end, as it turns out that there was one large contribution, 5-figure contribution at the very end, near the very end anyway, that came in, which was significant. And again, this was through August. So I wanted to at least share with all of you the analysis I did, because I was curious how to visualize this. And then you can see the exact same data, how much you got per week. So this is the donation amount by source. So blue would be the GoFundMe. So you could see we got about 12,000, let's just say. And so what you got each week on the blue, here's an uptick as we get close to the what would have been the carnival date. And then it was steady. And was steady, maybe a little bit of a declining, but even toward the very end, it was steady. And you guys got the weekly reports from me, which outlined how much and how many contributions each time. And same thing for the checks. As you can see, there was a couple of big hits, and the amounts for those hits rather than the cumulative, which we saw on the other graph. And again, the big spike at the end for the same reason as before. All right, that $20,000 type of of contribution that we got. Cumulative donations, how many over time? Again, you could see that, and this was through August.
Jim, are we almost done with this?
Yep.
I don't mean to be rude, but we're spending an awful lot of time on something that we've gone over and over. And, when checks came in, I think we need to move this meeting forward. So I don't know how many more slides you have.
Well, let me at least do this. I'd like to put this slide up just for a second or two. You've seen it before, but not everybody has, since OGAT has this. But these are the people that gave a significant amount. As you can see, that the 33 leadership sponsors by the middle of September, this would cover almost half at that point in time of our contributions, which were significant, for which we gave everybody this award and these graphics, decals, and the acknowledgements of various people. This is the last one, Kevin, so I'd like to leave this up. Again, Rick, PJ and PO, Chris Kelly from OGAT, the superintendents of schools who sent this out to their parents, Charlie and Bert Gallant from the Orange Volunteer Fire Departments, Jimmy and Dan from the Orange Ale House for their promotions, Paul Wilson from Golf Course 18, a promotion, Billy Kraut, Rocky, who did a tremendous amount, as did Terry, Jamie and Bob Asham, Jamie Vincent, Bob Ashenbald, and Bud and Judy Smith, Jimmy Zioli, who was very helpful, and then all of you. And that's what I got for this particular thing. Are you good, Kev?
I'm good, and I thought you did a tremendous job. So I just want to move things along. It's what was
No, I'm good with that. I can handle the feedback, Kevin.
What was done with you and the chief was great, and everybody involved. So thank you. Okay, so now item number 6, discussion and approval of minutes from September 21st, 2020. If we can remember that day, since we haven't met in so long. So I'll go with John first, if he's still with us. No, I think we lost him.
He's here. He's just on mute.
I can't see him on my screen.
You can slide it down the bottom.
Oh yeah, there's John.
As I said, I had to go back to the tape today because I forgot myself. All right, on the first page under number 2, Deb gave me a lot of credit this month for things when it was Kevin. So we need to change that from me to Mr. Houlihan.
Are you right here, John?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then on page 2 at the top, the same thing, the first bullet there, changed to Kevin again. And also in that same paragraph, that 14,150 should be 24,150. Now we can't change the school. We changed that tonight, but because that was the way we made the motion. And then down in the actual motion, we need to add Mr. Leahy made the motion for the town to take bids on the repair the Peck Place School. I think we need to clean that up. I think it should say Mr. Leahy made a motion to allocate $24,150 from the capital fund to repair the loading dock at Peck Place School, following all the town of Orange bidding procedures, which they did. And then Ms. Romano seconded that.
Okay.
Good on that, Deb?
Okay, and then I think that's it. I think that's all I had.
Well, I had one, but maybe you never know with the way I can be at the end of a meeting. On page 3, the top, where you suggested a special Board of Finance Zoom meeting with the chairman of the pension board. And it says, I suggested possibly using the Orange Board of Education meeting room for the September meeting, but this was our September meeting. So I might have said September, but I meant October. I don't know. So I don't know if it's correct as written or if I did say October.
It probably should be October. I would change it to that.
Okay, that's the only thing I had after those changes.
Since we're on that one, Kevin, and you brought it up, when are we going to have that meeting with the chairman of the pension board?
I don't know. Eric will meet with us. I'm sure we could have him, at our January meeting if we wanted to, John. But we need to get, I think we wanted Milliman, their advisors involved too.
I think without having Milliman there, it would be a waste of your time. It would it's got to be a Zoom meeting also, but he would be agreeable to that.
Okay, are we agreeing that we're going to try to have this thing we talked about having whenever we decided, October? Now, of course, it's December now, but we didn't meet in October when we were forced out. Well, we didn't meet in October or November for different reasons, but just reasons. Are we saying we still want to do that?
Okay, the other thing we have on the January meeting, we're going to have a Zoom with Dr. Byers also, and she's going to be presenting her budget. So I don't know if you want to do both of those on the same night. It's up to you guys.
I don't. I think that could get very lengthy. And not knowing if Milliman and the pension board's first, we could be holding her off for an hour and a half. And if she's first, we could have them delayed God knows how long. I would prefer not to do it the same night.
The other thing I might as well tell you right now, we probably, well, not probably, we won't have the audit in January. We're probably going to have a special meeting in February for the audit. everybody's delayed because of COVID, and we're extra delayed here because of the changeover of the computers. So most towns are probably going to be.
We had a town hall outbreak, unfortunately, and that's happened across the state. I mean, East Haven and was closed for a long time. And how are the auditors supposed to do their field work?
Yeah.
When they can't
haven't
get into
even
the building.
They haven't even been in the town hall yet. We've been feeding them, scanned copies of stuff, and that's not very productive.
No,
So I wasn't
back in the day. You don't want to look at scans. You want original documents. Sorry, PJ.
No, I apologize. What was the purpose of the special meeting?
It'll be to go over the pension. The pension, you wanted to hear how the investments were going and all.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Is that still a priority for us to do?
I think we're coming up to budget season, which is always a busy time for us. And I think there's probably a reason that we wanted to do this in October where it's not quite as busy.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a priority per se. I'd certainly like to meet with them, but I think if we push it off till April, May, I'm sure we'll be fine. I'm willing to hear what the other board members have to say on that.
I would divert to you, PJ, since you're the expert in that field.
PJ, tell me this. How long of a this item, not as a meeting, but this item, how long do you envision that would take? And I'm not putting a limit on it at all. I want to know from you what you envision. You're our best source.
I would say a half hour, 45 minutes.
I think it would be longer with Milliman and
really?
the chairman. Especially if they were going to try to make any projections into the future years. I mean, I think when we were very nervous because we know our contribution percentage is going up for the town side, and
right.
The market stability was things were. I mean, they're still fluid right now, obviously, but we were pretty nervous about where we could end up. And I think we
could have a pretty good pullback in January, February, as there's a lag between the vaccine being distributed and administered and then people getting back to work. So that could have a short-term effect on the economy and the market. But
we could have selling if they think, depending on what happens in Georgia too. You could have somebody, people thinking the taxes are going to go up and they can sell out. And you could have, I don't know, percentage of New Yorkers who own stock versus the rest of us. But if Cuomo gets his way and they put in that tax on per share for a New York resident who sells stock that he's pushing by year end, you could have, depending on when that law becomes effective, if it gets through, you could have those people selling, which create temporary downward pressure, but
right.
So
okay. I only have one. I guess it's an edit. Maybe it's just a thought, team. Let me get to that section of the page. On page 2, item as part of item 4, the last sentence here, where it says Mr. Leahy suggested the storm expense account be reviewed as part of the next steps items and be added to the agenda in the future. Our next steps items was a structured way for us to have items not be just talked about 1 month or at one point in time, and then, we talked about that, at one point, but we never didn't. So we now know that we had the storm expense account was one, and now we know we have the pension board discussion, I guess we could call it, as another next step. And the idea from that statement there that I just highlighted was to put next steps. And I don't know whether Deb, you and John or Audrey I don't know who exactly puts together the agenda. And I'm not sure this is the only way, but we could add next steps as an agenda topic that's always on the agenda sheet. But I think it would also be helpful to have what the next steps are on the agenda sheet or on the second page or something like that. Either that, it would be a simple way to keep track of it. And that's what I think was intended by this statement that I made there.
Yeah, Jim, and I'll take blame there too, because I'm part of the agenda, obviously, and I failed
right.
to include that. So
Obviously.
that's on me.
Oh, okay, but I just let's.
No, you're right. You're exactly right, and so I'm notating that now. So
Yeah, so how about this? How about we always have next steps, review of next steps, and we decide where you want it on the agenda. And then have on like an appendix to the agenda, page 2 or whatever, a list of what those next steps are. And we just add them to the list. And as we handle them, we cross them off or take them off. And we're down to, 4 rather than 5, that kind of thing. I think that's an easy process way to handle it. And
no, you're right. And we did do that a couple of years back. We were doing that.
We did. All right, thank you. That's all I have, by the way, team, on the notes.
Okay. Anyone else?
It's good.
So is there a motion to approve the minutes of September 21st as amended?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kevin. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, unanimous.
I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining?
I wasn't at the meeting.
You weren't there?
No.
No.
Oh, you were absent. Oh, shame on you.
Deb put it in bold.
Okay. Item number 7, to review and approve the regular meeting dates for 2021.
All right, I have
The only one I may have a problem with. What's that?
I have a calendar. I made a calendar for us, or a slide that has a calendar on it. Let me just, here it is. So we have this one. Oops, sorry team, I'm goofing. I got, like you, Pat, I have that thing in the way. That's why.
Okay.
That's my excuse, I guess I can say. Best I can do. How's that? Okay, so here's the PowerPoint calendar. And I think I can get the meeting schedule in the same one. There you go. I think you can see the days. Well, we're always on a Monday, right? So here is the 25th. So Kevin, did I hear you say that the 25th would be the Amity budget? Is that correct? On the 25th?
Yes, that was John. Yep.
Yes.
I just assumed, if you don't mind, as we could kind of kill 2 birds with one stone. We know that this document or something that I can clean up, that not only are we meeting, but what the topic is that particular day. If it's just an orange BOF meeting, then I'll use a yellow one.
These dates that you have in front of you were pretty much the same dates we followed this year. The April 19th, depending what happens with the budget, I think we'll probably be doing the budget the same way we did last year, or ourselves without a referendum. We probably won't be open enough at that time to do that. So it'll be fluid about that time.
Yeah, which I have to discuss some things under item 9 regarding exactly that.
Yeah.
So remind me.
We have an all-day meeting again, John. I had talked to you about trying to avoid some dates. That
We're gonna talk about that under item 9 also.
Yep.
I'm just going to put yellow ones in. We probably don't know when OBOF is coming in, right? So you guys can continue
Not
talking
yet.
about what makes sense. I'm just going to put them in this calendar.
So what I need a motion for these dates so they can be filed with the town clerk as we do every year and every committee and commission does every year.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Kevin. Any further discussion? And it's only going to be me. The March 15th meeting is a deadline day for me. Hopefully, that might end up being extended again because of COVID. Who knows? But worst comes to worst, we'll have to deal with that at the time. But since it most likely will be a Zoom meeting, I can multitask. So I don't. That's just to give everybody a heads up, because that does fall on an S-Corp partnership deadline day. But we'll play it by ear, and I'm good with the rest of this calendar if everybody else is. All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, unanimous. Great. Thank you. All right. Item number 9, current year budget issues. Okay, we'll start with the easy stuff first. The all-day meeting, Jim, as you mentioned, I don't see that happening unless we do it via Zoom and have the department heads maybe be at town hall on their computers to address us, or if we just get all the information and then set up our own schedules or our own workshops, whether they be, maybe it is an all-day type of thing, or else it's just, the people we really want to talk to become part of a different meeting or a budget workshop that we always add to this, our meeting schedule. I don't know how everybody else feels. I just don't, I don't see an all-day meeting in the basement of town hall happening in January or early February. I don't know how everyone else feels.
And I couldn't recommend that, because if we have that and they come in and somebody tests as positive or runs into somebody that tests positive, you'll all have to be quarantined after it. So
And then I'm bankrupt because it's the wrong time of year.
Take it from me, quarantine isn't fun.
Yeah, no,
And and if you do it from home, which if you want to do it from home, we're not going to bring them into the town hall. We're trying to keep the employees out of the town hall as much as possible. As you can see, when I went out, I took 5 people with me. So.
Way to go, John.
I know.
Just the kind of guy you are, John.
Luckily, none of them tested positive, only me, because I would have to live with that afterwards. But
I mean, they could be home or their offices and just dial into the Zoom.
Yeah.
right.
could.
We could set something up. I think the most important ones, not to leave anybody out because everybody's important, but it would be the police and public works are the 2 big ones, especially by dollar volume. So I don't know if we would actually need to do something all day or part of a day, but I'm open to everybody's thoughts.
Yeah.
I think if we can get a decent written justification from the department heads and then read it and the 6 of us meet to discuss, I don't know that we need them present.
that's kind of where I've been going with that, Pat. I've been telling them to do their write-ups. Some of them do it better than others, because I said I didn't think you were going to meet. And I said when they do meet and they have questions, they could relay them through me back to them and they could answer them.
Right.
It's what you want to do.
No, I would agree with you guys.
Why wouldn't we? I'm trying to remember what we do in these meetings, right? Usually one of the first ones to come in is the police, right?
Yeah.
I think they're the first, 8 o'clock or 8:05 or when PJ gets there, right? So
It's PJ.
no, because he has 8:07. It was
The bus.
I mean, it wasn't like 9
It is,
o'clock.
yes.
presentation, which is in our calendar, which is in our binder, right? And then we discuss it. We ask questions. How come we couldn't be doing that like we're having this? Am I missing something here?
No, we can't.
No, we can, but the point is we might not need to. We might just need to, we could go over it. And then if we have questions for the chief, John could be the point person instead of having him actually on a Zoom. But we could cross that when we, bridge when we see the complexity. Or it's really going to come down to me, is what are they coming in? What kind of budget are they coming in with, and what's the justification for it?
Well, but I don't see why he couldn't be in. If he's going to be for an hour from 8 to 9, why we seem to be creating a process where you have a middleman where an hour or 45 minutes, we can get our questions answered, hear the answers, and make and have come up with some tentative decisions. I agree 100% that we can skinny down how many people we do this with. I don't think we have to have, just because we did, I don't know, fire marshal 30 minutes because we did, that we have to do that. I think those type of ones we could do, Kevin. So I'd like you to consider the major ones and do it sort of like this. But some of them, there was some efficiencies we can certainly gain from it. That would be my thought.
I think we could scale down the amount of time if we got and all read and maybe even all discussed our questions, and then we don't need the dog and pony show is what I'm trying to say.
I agree.
I think we can read everything, and I think it would scale down the amount of time, and it would give us more time for discussion, which I think is more significant.
Don't we do that discussion when we get into the last?
We do. But again, I don't know. Personally, I don't know. Having been on both sides of budget dog and pony shows, I don't know that we quite need that. I mean, I've been doing this with you guys for 5 years now, and I could almost do everybody's presentation.
Hey, Pat, Kevin needs some time to cut the library's budget.
What budget?
Thanks, Joe. We're still on live TV.
That also brings up another problem too. When we meet, we're like we were always open downstairs, and any member of the public theoretically could walk in. We're going to have to broadcast this probably on OGAT when we meet.
Yes.
Which I don't think will be a problem, but just.
I see a lot of value in, there's two things you do with budgets, right? You look at numbers, and your justification. I read that stuff when I need to read it. I don't read it for homework before I get there. In an hour, I can do a lot more than, from 8 to 9. I can read all this budget, ask as many questions, and hear all your questions right at the same time. It's the most efficient hour I have with the police budget. For example, some of the other ones, like I say, I don't need to spend any time on those budgets. But there are two things you're doing with budgets, right? You're asking questions, but you're hearing answers. Asking questions of John, and then John gets an answer, and he tells you what the answer is. You're not hearing the answers. And anybody who's managed organizations knows sometimes it's what you hear in the answer in terms of content and also delivery that starts to form your thoughts on and opinions about that budget request. So I think the bigger ones, we should do a Zoom meeting like this. That's be my thought. However you, Kevin and John, want to skinny it down.
Okay, no, we'll come up with something, because I think, the chief of police needs to be heard. And I think public works, those are the two biggest ones in my mind. There might be a lot of others. But those are the two big downtown departments. And I know, we've been fortunate that our police department has hired 2 new officers. I believe they both came from the Hartford Police Department. One of the benefits of the whatever that Police Accountability Act is none of them want to be in the cities anymore. So we have 2 experienced officers joining our force, I believe. If one's not already there, they're both coming shortly.
Good.
So that's something we'll continue. John, you and I will work on that with them, and instead of scheduling a date today for an all day or a half day Zoom meeting, we'll make something that works for everyone. But yeah, we would definitely hear from those people. But I don't think we block out a Friday at the end of January or early February to have an all day Zoom meeting with all the department heads coming in. Do you agree with that, Jim?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I when I was suggesting last Friday in January, I was not thinking that we were going to be in another round of the COVID.
No, none of us did.
That we're experiencing right now. So, we have to adapt, and, from adaptation, you learn stuff, right? I mean,
Okay. Now, John, what you said earlier is something that I think, and I keep looking at papers instead of looking at the monitor. I have grave concerns, and we'll continue to talk about them under this topic, of how we did things last year. I have full confidence in our board approving our own budget without a referendum. We've had great, results at the polls when we did go to referendum. It's never been close. So I think the townspeople have trust in us. I do not, well, I don't know what we do. We talked to Attorney Marino, the first selectman of Orange, Woodbridge, and Bethany. My biggest fear is if things end up the same way they did last year, Amity approved their own budget. Mm-hmm. That literally, which we're going to talk about in a couple seconds, scares the hell out of me. So hopefully we can get, like I said before, last year when we were going through all this, I think Governor Lamont that was his only mistake. I think he's, he was thrusted. He gets elected and he ends up with this, and I think he's done a great job. But leaving the school districts to vote on their own budgets was a big mistake. And with that, Jim and Joe, I got paperwork all over my desk here. I think I sent this out to everyone too. The memo from Dr. Byers dated December 7th, which states that the staff and department leaders at Amity came in with an increase of 7.07%, which was basically $3.6 million increase. It was then reduced to 5.92 and then reduced to 5.39% over the current budget, which I don't have the number off the top of my head. I'm just going to throw a number out there based on Mr. Leahy's, what he did earlier. That's probably not a 5.39. It's probably closer to 8 or 9%. And I don't have the details of what's in that or why it's so high. But regardless, in the middle of a pandemic, we have had, from our tax collector, we've had record numbers of Orange residents applying for installment plans for their second property tax payment.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. That is.
Do you have any data on that,
correct.
Kevin?
I don't have the numbers. I don't know if John has any numbers. I just know verbally that's what I was told from her office. And it kind of makes sense. We got lucky in July because people who were unemployed did receive the additional $600 from the federal unemployment that went on top of the state, and that's now gone.
Right.
So I don't have numbers, but that's what I was told, that it is a record number of people coming in. And Sandy has been, John, how long has she been in office? It's got to be at least 15 years, correct?
I think it's 18.
18 years. So
Yeah.
the highest amount in 18 years, which includes the 2008 financial crisis. So, it's not like, oh, everything was great and then we have this. So but we did have a financial crisis, the mortgage crisis, and this is much worse.
The governor also extended, I believe, last week, the deferment on taxes for the January payments. If you fill out the form, I don't believe our Board of Selectmen has acted yet on that, though, or if they have to act.
Could I just get the concept right, because I'm missing something, and I don't want to be off, right, if I talk to people. So myself, I pay $7,000 a year in taxes. So every half year I pay $3,500, right? Thereabouts. So John, I'm going to walk into town hall in the next month and I'll pay $3,500. A lot of people are asking for deferments. Is that it? And what does it mean? Can you bring it to life for me?
Last July, because of all the people out of work that had been laid off and stuff,
right,
the state did a deferment on your taxes by the Board of Selectmen passing a document agreeing to it. Your July 1st taxes could have been put off to October 1st without paying any interest.
Without penalty, right?
Right.
Okay.
And
the interest is 18%.
What? Pardon me?
Like I said, the statutory interest prior to this was 18%. So it's a hefty penalty for not paying.
Correct. And we did have some people that took advantage of that. She since had people that didn't take advantage of that, or then when October came, still couldn't pay their taxes. So then she put them on a payment plan. Well, that was only for July. Last week, the governor extended that program. So I don't know. I haven't spoken to Attorney Marino. I don't know if the Board of Selectmen has to reenact it again, or because they did it for July, it extends into January.
Okay, so you're saying.
And then I thought I read somewhere that the January was extended to April, but I could be wrong.
Well, that would be what it
similar.
is. If it's a deferred again, if the town participates, yes.
So it used to be you had to have it paid by August 1st. And then it went, no, you get August for free, September for free. You got to get it by
October 1st.
October 1st. So now it's January 1st. You have to have it paid by February 1st. But so that's January's kind of free in the sense. So February's free, March is free. So that would be April 1st.
Right.
If it was similar for the second, what we would call, or the way they say it, the second half.
Right.
Seems to be a lot more people who are now interested in doing that. Or is it a lot more people weren't able to make the October 1st even their payment and had to go on a payment plan? Which is the data?
I think it's a lot of people didn't do anything in July, couldn't pay their taxes, didn't know about the payment plan. And then when she sent out her notices that said, you need to talk to me, and she made the deals with them then. And probably, quite frankly, these are going to be people in January that aren't going to be able to pay.
Sure.
Probably people that are still unemployed, that have probably gone through a lot of their liquid cash.
Right.
That are looking for some help then. I looked at our revenue collections today. We're down about $1 million from where we were last year at this time. But that doesn't mean anything. You could have a couple of big owners on the post road walk in tomorrow and pay it, and it'll be right up to date. So
Okay.
I'm not that concerned about it yet, but it's something we have to keep an eye on, as I said
Do you
back
know,
earlier.
is this residential people or is this commercial people?
I took it to be residential, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Because when I ran the data from the things that you sent out, which is the next topic, I didn't see it in the data.
Mhm.
But when we present it, you can educate me, or you can take my thoughts on what I see there or not. So what else do we need to accomplish in number 9, Kev?
Well, I have spoken to other people involved with Amity, including the chairman, because, this document just, floored me. That's why I sent out a copy to everybody a couple weeks back.
Yeah, I've got it up on the screen right now.
And the response was, that the finance committee nor the Board of Ed has gone through this budget yet to see, what's what, and it's going to change, obviously. But my concern is that in this kind of environment, that you would even have the gall to come in with this kind of increase as a department head, because then maybe, in my opinion, you shouldn't be a department head. But just to add to that, I've talked to our first selectman, and he met with Superintendent Byers. And Jim, I think you and I spoke of this, and I was wrong. And he's like, "This is what I did. That's my standing, because of their budget surpluses over the last 5 years have been massive." Our first selectman met with Superintendent Byers and told her not only did he not expect an increase this year, he expected a $2 million decrease. So that's where our town leader stood. Paula Cofrancesco and Bethany, and Beth Heller and Woodbridge, I don't think they're at that level, but they are both, from my discussions, very much opposed to what this memo represents of this increase.
Anybody's watching at home, and everybody in our meeting too, you obviously know that this is the page 114, Joe, of your presentation earlier where we were looking at it, but Kevin had sent it out in a note to us after he had this, so I'll just kind of throw up Kevin's memo. And so he just spiked out that page. And that's, by the way, a process, Kevin, I do not know how to do. So you're going to have to teach me how you pluck one page out of a multi-page PDF and make it another PDF. It's great. And you mentioned, you say to Joe, I can't imagine other town representatives on the AFC. Did you have a conversation with Giglietti over at Woodbridge?
I have spoken with Matt, and I believe, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I could paraphrase. He's of the same thought process that I am, and that this is this can't go anywhere. It's just, in a good environment, 5.39 is not acceptable.
Right.
In this environment, I mean, it shouldn't even come across our desks. I mean, if you were in private industry, if somebody in my office came in and said, "This is what I'm going to do," I'd be like, well, first you're going to clean out your desk, and then, and we'll have a discussion. I just, it seems like we spend so much time talking about them, but it's the biggest part of our budget, and it's the biggest part of our increases. And, I think, and I've talked to the chairman of the Orange Board of Ed, that we need a united front, because if they have the ability, like last year, to pass their own budget and do what they want, that hurts the Orange school system, our police department, our public works, our life, everybody across the board. Because if this is what we're looking at, and we know it ultimately won't be this, but whatever it may be, it's we're in a position. Our responsibility is to do the best we can for our residents and our taxpayers. And if they take the lion's share of any grand list growth or anything else that may be occurring, it's going to harm the rest of the town, and it's just not right, especially with the budget surpluses they're running. And it's not only not right, it's not needed. I mean, Jim's chart earlier, with the actual increase, $3.5 million surplus this year.
Mhm.
It's
We're here.
it's something we need to address more than. And this year it takes more than Jim and Joe. I've been up there a few times in the past, probably not enough. But first Selectman Zioli, I think we're going to need, Chairman Crow, we're going to need Beth Heller from Woodbridge and Paula Francesco from Bethany and their Board of Finance to say, that this is enough's enough. We can't do this year. But that's my opinion.
If you add up last year's surplus, plus the money that they spent that should have been surplus, that equals what they're looking for this year. So this is another year
That's a great
of
point.
we're giving them their surplus is equal to what they're asking for. Where if they come in zero, they should still almost break even this year.
Mhm.
If you
I
juggle
think that's where the first selectman is. He said cut your budget by 2 million, knowing
Yep.
that they have the surpluses. And let's be realistic, nobody's going to do that. But that sends the tone exactly what Kevin said. Come in at zero, and you know what? You're probably still going to have
a surplus.
Yeah.
Could I ask Kevin Moffett if I could, Kevin, make believe it's just you and me for a second, but everybody can listen in. Let me give you my take. 15 years of listening to this, a number of different at Amity. We asked our department heads to tell us what they need. We examined it. We cut back. And we cut back as much as we could. And then when it was too much for reasonableness for taxpayers, there was kind of like this begrudging acceptance to slightly lower it. I have never heard in anywhere but education that process is the way you do budgeting.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, you and me are now both retired and we've both been in industry, you down, I believe, Yale a long time. My way off on that process being a little bit off? Please, your how you see budgets done.
Yeah, having gone through that process, of course, in our case, the thing was you're not going to do anything to affect the students, okay? But everything else took it, whether it was to the bone or below, it was affected. There was nothing that was sacred, really, that was not going to be affected by cuts if you needed them. I mean, there were salary freezes. In some cases, there were cutbacks. There were layoffs. The reduction of hours, all types of things. But it was all hands on deck when it came to to tough times. The economic, because in our case, a lot of how the place runs, it has to do with donations from the outside. Well, a lot of people that make big money weren't making big money back, as Kevin said before, during the 08 and 09, during those years. So the income flow was not there, and the donations were not there, and so all hands were on deck. I understand, that you have contracts, and they may not be, untouchable, but you've got to really take a hard look at it. You just can't, just kind of cut out the low-hanging fruit. You got to take a serious look at this. And I thought there's enough people on that board that are in business themselves that understand that. But I may be wrong.
No, I hope you're right and they do something. And to Kevin's point and Jim's point, when we went through 08, which was to me a walk in the park compared to right now, we had furlough days, we froze salaries, and there is zero talk of that. Now, again, my wife's a special ed teacher, and she's never worked harder than she has. They've been full in class since September. So the schools that are doing that, it's extremely difficult. So I don't want to come across as somebody anti-teacher, because absolutely not. And they're going through, this is, to say it's a difficult time is the massive understatement of the day. But there's other things that can be reduced. Like Kevin said, Yale didn't want it. They never hurt the students, but there are other things were put on hold. And I think there's a lot that can be put on hold up at Amity. And they had, this board asked them not to create that new position last year, which was it was a bad year, and it was a job in excess of $100,000, and they did it anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
130. It was well in excess of $100,000.
So,
And that's before you had benefits.
Yeah.
So, those are the things that there is money that can be saved. It's not, oh, woe is us, in my opinion. And we're not going to hurt the teachers, but I don't know if there's additions in this budget, what there is, but
Yep.
it's not the time to add, especially the reality is we do this every year. And if Chief Gagne's watching, forgive me, with the police department, we know it. They come in, they're always understaffed. They have retirees and they need to replace officers. And we reduce the salary line because we know that they're not going to have that position on July 1st. And so we reduce it. Maybe it's, by January 1st, or, come back to us or whatever it may be. But if they have new positions, I mean, I think I saw a stat the other day, 78% is the employment in the schools in this country, because they can't find people because people have retired and people are afraid to go into the classroom.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if they have those kinds of line items in this budget, without having the specifics, they're not going to be real on July 1st. It's just not going to happen.
You made a good point before when you said if like last year they approved their own budget, and and they stand firm on where they are and aren't listening to what we're asking them to do. It comes back on our Board of Ed, our fire department, our police department, the library, any of these departments that, and we put that on them, and we've been doing that now for the last 4 or 5 years. That if they don't budge, we have to take it out of on this end of it, and eventually, we're going to have a revolt here from saying, wait a minute, you do this every year, and we're giving you a pretty bare bones budget to begin with, and we're having to chop. So
I agree.
So sooner or later, it's going to come back and come around and bite us again.
Well, here's the kicker for me. This unrealistic budget process that I have seen for 15 years. You ask for a wish list, you get a wish list. Then you make, I would say, more reasonableness. And if this year it's 7.07%, Kevin, if that was the number in the memo, 5 point something percent. And it comes down and it comes down. And I myself have felt oftentimes a lonely soldier up there at Amity, presenting the point of view that this is unreasonable. I remember one year, 95% of our spending increase in Orange went straight to Amity. And 5% went to town and to the budget for the town and the OBOE. And yet we have this picture. Give me a second to find it, team. Yeah. If you recall, last year, I gave them this blank sheet and I said, hey, before we meet this week, fill out this sheet for me, will you? And I gave it to them, this sheet blank. They sent me the data. I took the data. As you can see, here's your budgets, here's your surpluses, here's your students, here's your FTEs. If you're at home and you really want to understand where your tax money's going, if you're on the Orange Board of Education, if you're in one of the departments in Orange, pay close attention to what you're going to see in the next 3 minutes. This is what's going on with your money being spent in taxes at Amity. And we all want great things for our students. That's not in debate here. What's in debate is how to do it effectively. So we look at these surpluses and we look at the students. You can see just from this chart, the number of students have gone down significantly. You can see the number of FTEs have gone up, full-time equivalents, all right, teachers and other staff. You can see the number of students have gone down 14% from its high in about 10 years ago. You can see the number of FTEs have gone up 4% over the same 10-year or so period. Now, again, I did this last year. You can see, therefore, the number of students per FTE has gone down significantly, 16% from high to low. You can see that the average increase from budget increases over the years have averaged that red line there of 2.38%. From a low circled there of 0.47, all right, to a high of 7.64%, which was right before that 2008 situation that Kevin was alluding to, and most of us remember full well. And you can see that what's happened for the surplus, it has somehow risen. And over the last years, 12 or 13 years, you can see that we have had 1,389,422 of surplus, the way they calculated, even when they spend some of it, which would have been over and above that. Remember, surplus from our point of view is money that you had at the end of the year that you had not budgeted for. If you then spent it on something else, all right, and then had a net like they did this year of 1.95,777,000, then that would be the number here, even though. So this is a conservative surplus amount.
It doesn't include the black box theater that they spent the money on.
Correct.
Don't even bring that up.
No, that still bothers me.
Yeah.
Here's the one that really gets you. The blue. Everybody focus in now. The blue is the amount of increase in dollars in that year, from one year to the next. And this is at the end of that, dim your wish list, cut it down, that pain in the neck guy, Jim Leahy, shows up, and we do something or we don't do something, and maybe someone else, whatever. And eventually you have an increase in blue, a dollar increase. In orange, at the end of that fiscal year, you have the amount of surplus. Now, sharp eyes of the world, let's focus in. What is this really telling us? What this is telling us, if you focus in on, and I have to create a slide to really focus in on one of these, so I'll focus in on 16, 17. It's saying that $933,000 was the amount of the increase at the end of that process. I have actually heard that I am trying to not have kids be educated. I have actually heard people tell me that I did not want the students in my town be educated as well as the students in another town. That's what I've been subjected to. And yet, at the end of that very fiscal year, for which they had a $933,000 increase in budget, Their surplus was in orange, 1,793,500. Almost double. Said another way, you could have had zero increase, no blue, and you would have had the difference between the orange and the blue still as surplus. Now take a look at your orange and blues over time. You can see in the last 10 years, the budget surplus has been greater than the budget increase requested. Only by a little bit was it off. That's what's been happening the last 10 years. That's what happened last year. So what happened last year, you could say, oh, it's a pandemic. We had to close down and that's how come. No. Right there. You can see it. It's the data. And the kids get educated very well. And like Kevin Moffett was saying, we had to stretch. We had to find a way to win. We had to find a way to do it. It just feels that we have 1/3 of our budget that goes through a process that isn't the same as the others and needs to be examined and corrected. That's what I'm thinking. And that's
it's slightly over 1/3 now because they've grown. And, you know, wouldn't our police or public works love because basically they're the lion's share of the town budget that they had all this extra money. And they don't. They're getting by on what we give them because they get cut because of the increases up in at Amity, and you know that's the problem. Same with the Orange Board of Education. They take the brunt of these increases, and you know it's not fair anymore. In this year during the pandemic, it's really not fair.
Yeah, and when you know, like we already said earlier, about coming back to what we said to close the loop with Joe's in our comments about Amity, that if you take the actual spent last year, 46,099,307, and what they have for a budget, they already have had. Who's getting a 10% increase in budget, by the way, these days?
Who's getting a 10% increase in anything? You know,
I just don't know. There's a need for leadership, and I think we have to find out where we as a board are, and then enlist support and educate where we can, and influence where we are able. But this is the data from which to educate. I think anyway. And I'd like to know how everybody else feels about what Kevin is saying, you know, in his words, maybe not exactly the same words you might say, but where do you guys stand? Where do we all stand on this?
Yeah,
one question. Go ahead, Kev. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, Joe, I'll let you speak in a second, but I was going to thank Jim for that segue, because I know from talking to Matt and Woodbridge and Jim and others, because, you know, when I saw this and I sent it to everybody, you know, this really set me off. I want to give power to our first selectman, to Woodbridge, to Bethany, because I think that the three of us have to come together. And what do we expect from them? Is there something we can talk about tonight, or not, as to, based on the data, especially what Jim's shown and what we know as a history, what can we, or are we willing to do to send as a board to say, this is what we expect from you? Because I would like to do that. I'll do it personally, but I'd rather do it as a board to say, you know, based on surpluses, you know, we expect no more than a 2%, no more than a 1%, or we expect a negative 1% cut,
Yeah.
budget. I don't know what that is, and I'd like to throw that out there for discussion to see where we all stand.
Well, I think there's a real structural issue here in terms of control, which we don't have as a board for our taxpayers. So we really can't, because of the structure of this, we really have very little say. And our constituents, which are all of our taxpayers, have very little say through us. And I think that's part of the nature of a regional school board. And I agree with you, Kevin. I think unless and until all three towns can work together to exercise some more oversight and some more control, we're going to constantly be caught in this, I would call it a conundrum of essentially being forced to accept what Amity has decided they need.
Pat, do you say that? Thank you for that, in my mind, very insightful comment. I like how you articulated that. Do you say that in light of last year's situation where they were able to, it didn't even have to go to a referendum? Or are you saying that over and above that situation? Because you have been here long enough, 5 years, you mentioned earlier, of doing this job. Are you saying it because of just last year or in general?
Well, last year I think was the worst of it, but I think again it's interesting to contrast what we do with the Orange Board of Education and what we can't do with the Amity Board of Education in terms of control and recommendations. And I'm using control in a non-pejorative sense. And we really are one step away from any sort of control that we have. We can listen and we can recommend, but we really don't have the final say. And I think that's what the issue is. And I was also thinking back in terms of the budgeting that I've done over the course of my career. And one of the questions that I thought was always very insightful to ask people when they present a budget is, what's the effect of your not getting this? And I think we need to ask what's going to happen if you don't get this money. Tell me, don't say the students are not going to get educated. Tell me really what's going to happen if you're cut back to $2 million less of a budget.
All right, thanks, Pat.
I agree. And maybe there's some programs that have to be looked at if there's only a few students in it.
Yeah.
We just can't offer that luxury anymore. Or maybe we can because they don't spend it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to be careful. We're treading a fine line here. I mean, the Amity Board is the one that determines what to do with the money. It's not our job to tell them what to do with the money.
And that's part of the issue.
Now, I mean, we tell the Orange Board of Ed, we give them a dollar figure and say, we need this much money out, and leave it up to them to juggle and I think that's worked out best because we're the financial end of it. They're the program end of it. And, like we don't fish in their pond and they don't fish in our pond. So we should leave it that way. And I think that way we won't turn this into a civil war. But, just say, listen, we'd like to see, as Kevin said, we'd like to see $2 million out of it, or we'd like to see this percentage, whatever. We'll give them a number or an ideal number, because again, we don't have the input into their budget like we do with the orange budget, and say, okay, we would like to see this. What can you do? What can you do about it? And just go from there. My 2 cents.
BJ, could you elaborate on your point again? I was writing down Kevin's.
Yeah, my point is simple. It's not our job to tell people what to do with their money.
That's a different issue, I think. What to do with their money once?
No, it's not.
Huh?
We shouldn't be getting into the removing programs, and that part of the discussion isn't our business. If you want to talk purely finances, to the point Kevin made, where you have this pool of money, we'd like to see it lowered.
Yes.
You do what you need to do that. That's one thing, but we're not in the business of telling these departments what to do with their money.
So
No, I agree. And I made that comment about programs and if there's fewer students, just as something for them to look at. We can't look at it, but I did say it. But I agree, but they're inflated, and
I agree. I actually talked to John today, and he
it's an affordability issue.
He is of the mindset that this was not even the first stab at it. This was just what the departments came in at, or the department heads, and then they were going to go through it. And I have confidence in his ability and the rest of the board's ability to come in with a reasonable budget.
Can I just say something?
Yes. Sure.
He said that, but they only have one more meeting in January before she comes to present her budget to us. So, I mean, is she going to cut that budget that much to your liking by the end of January? Just something to think about. The other thing that nobody mentioned, last year when they did cut a certain amount of money from their budget, they then took the surplus from the budget, and I'm thinking about those computer systems up there, and they paid for it with the surplus and took it out of their budget. So, that's the other thing they did up there.
There is more than one item as you look at this screen. You can certainly
John,
see
to your point, I forget what page it was because I don't have it in front of me, but they did buy computer stuff, and they didn't reduce their 5-year plan on computers, even though they used last year's budget surplus to pay for some of it, and it stayed there as a line item. So they were like, it was like almost a built-in surplus again, in my opinion, because I don't have it in front of me. I'd be glad to get it and scan it to everybody for the next meeting, but or beforehand, they had, when you looked at their budget, when they had their schedule for the computers, then they took it out, but this stayed the same. And I questioned it. I questioned them as to shouldn't something have dropped, and it did not. So that's built in. It's already built into this year's budget.
Yeah, the one I'm thinking about was like a 4 or 5 year contract for computer consulting and all.
Yeah.
And I don't see it there either in that list, Jim, that you have.
Well, there's a number of items being discussed, but I was just gonna, as you guys started talking, I had already flipped to this, so I'll just tell you what I know and what I don't know. But I know that both points that you're making were there. Joe Nuzzo, you remember last year that the IT project was brought forward, okay? That was improving their internet capability. We can see that this 257 number that was items that was taken out of last year's proposed budget for 2021 at 2.49%. They took money out of surplus, which prior superintendent got to the turn, took the time, and we responded in kind to say what we expected them to do with surplus of budgets. And it was not to spend money on future things that they didn't get for their wish list in the next year's budget, but that's exactly what they did, this 257. Under current leadership, they then, in this 367, Kevin, that's the item, I believe, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, where they pulled forward. I think they were trying to get sophomore classes done with computers in this year. And what they did is they pulled it forward and either got half of the students, juniors, or all of the juniors or something like that. And that's buried in this 367 number. So there's two different IT ones involved here, in addition to the items that they spent that they couldn't able to put into their 2.479 budget last year. All right, so all the stuff that they've already put in, you would expect, oh, well, they won't need as much next year. And here we are with these departmental wish lists. And PJ, I'm going to bring you back so I can see you. I'd love to feel, on the one hand, I'm hearing you say you agree with Kevin Moffett that, you know, we want to be in the financial end. We don't want to be in the program end. Yeah, we don't want to tell them how to do program. But by the same token, you don't have program managers going in organizations saying, this is what I need to do programs. They're not making that decision on their own in any program management operation that I've ever seen. They have to go through a financial component, and therein lies the rub, right? So are you agreeing that you agree with Kevin Moffett, or are you saying something different? I just need to know where we're all feeling here.
My point is very simple. The Board of Finance shouldn't be telling other boards how to spend their money. So I don't know who said that. That's what I'm saying.
What would you support for an amount, for a budgeted amount for Amity for next year?
I mean, we haven't even gotten that far yet. That's not.
They have. That's what Kevin's memo was all about.
I didn't see any suggestions
right there. This note that he sent out the other day. If I could only get it to come back.
You had it on the screen for too long with my comment about the.
No, here it is. Here. Yeah, there it is there. 12/11, Friday, 2:06. And, you know, we have ourselves every year said, here's what we as the board would support. And
we'll get there. Again, what we support isn't telling them what to do with the money, where to cut, what to do. That's not our job.
But I think if possible, because like John said earlier, it's December 21st. Jen Byers is coming to us on January 25th.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to write a letter, and I'll just sign my own name or anybody else on the board who wants to be part of it as to what we expect from them as an increase. And to me, based on their surpluses, I'm at 0 or 1% at the maximum. I don't know what everybody else would be at. And that's why, you know, if the board can't agree to send a memo as a board, like we've done with Joe at the Amity Finance Committee meetings, to say, you know, if it's not 1.5, you vote no. You know, we've done that in the past. We've done that every year.
We've done that every year. Yeah.
I want to get something. I would like to get something out as a board. If we can't agree on something as a board, that's fine. I'm going to do something on my own, probably along with the first selectman, probably along with Matt Giglietti, the finance chairman of Woodbridge, and Bethany, because I know Woodbridge is really in the most compromised position because their ADM went up. So 5.39 is really 6.39 to Woodbridge. Whether that's the final number or not doesn't matter. Their increase is going to be greater than ours as a percentage. And I know they're not on board with any of this, and obviously they can't be. So that's what I'm trying to say. Where are we as a board? And if we're not anywhere, that's fine. Because I need to speak my own mind, but I if people are like, this is what I would agree to, as if we're telling Joe, because really we haven't met, and things are speeding up with the budget. I mean, Amity always pushes their budget faster than anybody else. We always, Orange, the OBOE, we don't vote on that until usually early April. And we met them a couple of times. Amity always pushes it fast.
I think they do that for a reason.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well,
I agree with you, Kevin. The way we've done it in the past, we've said to Joe when he's going to vote on the meeting, if it does not exceed X, whatever the number we agree on is, then your vote should be no. And I think we should take that same position again this year. And I also agree with PJ's point where, again, we agree with that percentage, which is this, and you figure out where the money comes from. I don't want to say, the art department has to, can't use red crayons this year. We don't want to get down to that level of detail.
We never have.
I agree.
And that's the way I think we've been in the past, and I think we should stay that way.
The issue that I have, though, is that they come to us with specific programs that they theoretically desperately need, which is the reason why they need more money.
Yep.
And you can't have it both ways. Either we're giving you X amount of dollars, you spend it however you want to, or you tell us why you need it, and we'll decide whether we feel that's worthy of us funding. My issue is it can't be both ways. I don't disagree with PJ in terms of we should not be micromanaging what they spend or making programming decisions. But then when you come to us, and I'll use a word, begging because you need program money, that shouldn't be our responsibility then to say, yes, you have it, or no, you don't. So I don't have an issue with saying, here's X amount of dollars, spend it as you need it. Which is basically what we do in the end. We say, you can go 1%, you figure out how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what we've done most every year. Joe, we haven't heard from you. You're our AFC rep.
I'm taking some notes. I'm making my case here. We hear this over and over, and again, ABOE falls on deaf ears. But a couple of things. We've invested a significant amount of money in infrastructure, one-to-one computers, remote learning. Shouldn't we start to see some savings from remote learning? I mean, no one talks about savings. It says more money. PPE, I understand that, yes. And that will be ongoing for a little while longer. But there never seems to be any savings. No one talks about, aren't we saving money by having the kids work from home versus coming into the building? And I don't know why salaries are continuing to go up. We've made so many investments in technology, the infrastructure technology, the laptops. When is enough? And then the other thing too is you look at the surpluses year after year, and we always talk about the same thing, but it falls on deaf ears. And if the ABOE, like PJ said, they're in control. It is. The other thing is we are now at almost 51% of the students. Shouldn't we be the majority vote here? Our vote doesn't seem to mean much as the majority client in all of this.
Well, Joe, hold on now. We have 7 members of the Amity Board of Education who live in Orange.
Right.
That's a majority.
Right.
Of 13.
Yeah.
So, and you and how many other members of the Amity Finance Committee? Is Chris Brow on that committee?
Yes.
And the chairman is also is she from Orange?
No. Oh, Pat Cardozo?
Yes. Oh, wait a minute. Who else is from Orange in that committee?
It's me, Chris Brow,
That's it.
just two of us. We each have two.
That was the issue, Jim. We tried to change
Yeah,
originally because we were 50% of, or 51%.
Yeah, I remember I tried to change it. It's great getting younger.
but we only had, 1/3 representation on the finance committee.
Yeah.
50% of the money, 1/3 on the finance, because each town got 2 members. And that, we didn't get anywhere with changing that legislation, but I remember we tried.
Right. Well, I think you're pushing us, Kevin. And our next meeting is all the way till the end of January?
Unless we call a special meeting, that's, January 25th.
Well, I think before the 25th, my idea would be that whatever else we do, and Kevin, you've suggested something, we either tonight start talking about where we see a number that we could support, just like we've done every other year. And how that happens usually is in our all-day meeting. At the end of the meeting, say, okay, we got to come up with a number, and we do. And we talk it through, and we say, okay, this and that. And I think that's pretty fair. Unless someone says that's not what's happened. I think that's what's happened. And one way of doing that is come up with one soon. It could be tonight, but I think it should be reasonably soon, perhaps at a special meeting. I don't know.
Jim, I think I agree with you. I think it would have to be, because this year we're in an unusual situation where Dr. Byers is going to come to our meeting on January 25th. So that would have been before our all-day meeting. So correct. I want to send something, and again, I'm happy to just sign my own name to it, and but I'd like the board support with a number to send them something, and if people want more time, and we schedule, a 20-minute Zoom meeting next week or something for everybody to think about what that number might be in their minds, that's fine. But I want to send a note to Amity, to the superintendent, long before she comes to our meeting on January 25th. That's my, my goal. I don't want her to come and we sell her something and, oh, well, we had no idea. Well, clearly you do have an idea because, other people have spoken to you, but I want it to be documented.
Kevin Moffett, what are your thoughts on the approach and numbers?
Well, I think, like I've said previously, that we should do like we've done in the past, except a little earlier, as Kevin says he wants it. So let's give a number to Kevin and say, okay, we support you in how you're going forward, and have it represent the Orange Board of Finance. And Kevin, as our chairman, speaking up for that.
Okay.
And my number, the two numbers we've seen so far have been what, 7.5, and then what, 3.5, or 7.5 and 5.5.
Their low number is 5.39.
Okay, well, that's
like out of the gate. I mean, that's
very, very, very preliminary.
Very.
Oh yeah, no, understand that. To me, it would be, again, just my very preliminary number would be 2% or less.
Mine would be lower than that.
Yeah. Okay.
I would agree, lower than that.
So
where would you come from?
I would start with one.
I think there could be, and I would normally agree with that, Pat. I think there could be some significant COVID-related expenses that Amity is incurring that will have an effect on the budget this year.
Well, getting back to what we said in the spring in terms of the questions we asked, and I think Jim brought it up again, we don't really know if and whether there were COVID-related savings as well.
Yeah, Joe even brought that up too.
Yeah. We really
don't
don't, we don't have a handle on that.
Is great because you're still operating the school. So the teachers are still there. I don't think the savings are going to be as great.
They may have been greater in the spring than they are now.
Right.
Again, we really don't know.
Jim, could you bring up the slide that you had that showed the projected expenses? I think it was for the what was my train of thought here? Click it.
Was it a PowerPoint slide or was it?
It was the healthcare related expenses projected out for the year.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, and they got a $600,000 savings.
Right.
And that's, and PJ, I love you. And I know they're going to have COVID related expenses, but so does
PJ?
every business in America who is suffering. Right. And they are like the state or the federal government where they get their revenue from taxing us. And we don't have it. And that's my issue in this whole scenario is we don't have it. We have residents on payment plans. We have this and that. You have these other expenses. They need to figure out how to save. And they've had surpluses. And I do have sympathy for everybody and the PPE and the teachers and everything else. But they need to figure it out. It's not like, your own business, your company. Can you raise more revenue? No, the only way you raise more revenue is by working harder.
Right.
They don't have to do that. And that's, unfortunately, that's where I think we're at. They need to figure out what's most important and save that, because this is a time when the money's just not there. We cannot go to if we went to our residents with their preliminary budget, and I agree, it's not final, obviously, but if we raise taxes on Orange residents by 5% this year.
No, I know. It's not going to be anywhere near 5, but.
Kevin, it isn't. I have one of the tasks I actually told Kevin that I would do, and I have yet to do, is actually have numbers from every year that I can go back and research the files. And I pretty much go back to 2005. I don't know how great my filing system is as farther back I went, but I've gotten better at it over the last decade anyway. But I have a lot of it. But I know that every year, and you guys have been on here for however many years, Kevin Moffett, how many years have we seen slides? And one of the slides is always, we started with this amount and we cut to this amount and we got back to this amount. And we're here, and boy, are we down to bare bones.
Yep.
And we're down to bare bones. And yet somehow, we end up with this. Somehow. And this year, of all years, we got to cut to the chase, in my mind, at the outset. It's not our job, and I agree with you, PJ, and others who have said, I've never said, here's what you were going to cut. That's why when they give us this 120-page document and say, okay, show us where to cut, that's not our job. We can look at it and they'll hear a couple of your assumptions or whatever. But this chart is after you get way from the 7 to the 5 to the 3. As a matter of fact, if you go back, if you even go forward and you look at the percentage increases budget to budget, you can see that the average budget to do it budget is 2.38. That's the blue. That's the average. So tell me it's 707, 5 this. I know it's going to come down to something that looks like this. Now, last year it was 2.49. But when you look at the orange, which is the actuals to budget, you can see it's more than double that. And this past year, as I just showed you earlier today, it's over 10%. They are operating and spending 10% more money than they did just last year. See how you go above zero projecting into next year. I'll do whatever you guys do and want to come together as a group. But I mean, look at the data. And I don't want to, like PJ, I agree with you. I don't want to tell them how to spend the money. But like Kevin says, they get their money from us and we don't have it. What we're talking about with John telling us about what's happening with people down in the tax office. What are our responsibilities globally? That's what I'm worried about.
Jim, could you go back to the Excel spreadsheet that you did the analysis that had the actual, the budget, 10% on the right-hand side?
Over here? Yes. I believe that's the one you want. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Whoops. Something happened with one of my items. I may have to redo it. No, it's still the same.
So last year's expenditures were 46 million.
Spending.
Right.
And that came from the budget, the surplus, the additional spending, which may be off by a little bit, but that's that COVID sheet that I had here. And I'm not sure, Joe, whether this was the last one, but it's grenade close at least. So you took the 49, you subtracted these two, so they actually spent the 46 odd, which is where Kevin had in his mind the idea of 3.5 million surplus.
Yeah.
And we know from these slides over here, right, that prior years, there's been surpluses in that range. And yes, agreed, last year was probably a year where we had more surplus due to the COVID, for sure. Right. And so while they only had budget to budget of 1.2, when you do actuals to budget, so the budget's still the same, it's still this 5784 number. Give it some bold if I can get the picture thing to get out of my way. And now you actually have a 10% increase. So they are operating the school year right now at a 10% increase from what they actually spent last year, other than the items that they're about to give back to the town, which is this one, the 1.9, right, and what they spent in that list of items that we've been discussing, or it's discussed a little bit. Does that answer your question? I'm not.
No, yeah. So 1% increase would be about 500,000.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Roughly 5. Yeah, whatever. 507. And again, Jim Zioli, and what I thought I heard from you, Kevin, what was Giglietti's response to Zioli's request? Have you heard anything? I don't know if I'd like to hear you.
No, Jim told, and he knew about it, that he met with buyers and said he wanted a $2 million decrease. Matt did not, I don't want to put words in his mouth, say he agreed with that, but he certainly didn't disagree with it.
That's a 4% decrease, by the way.
And I know, Woodbridge is, they're in a tough situation out there. But he knew about that, and he's, reducing the budget is one thing, but getting it down to 0 or 1 is another. And I think their goal would be to get it down to, as close to 0 as possible. And to me, with Joe, I'm of the inclination to ask for zero because we know we're not going to get it. We've never gotten anything we've asked for, but publicly to go out in public and say this is what we expect, and this is why, exactly what you showed, 10% increase, the surplus, to this, that, and the other thing, and it's already built in. That chart that shows all those years for the last 10 years, for the most part, your surplus was bigger than your increase, so you didn't need an increase. And this is the worst times we've ever had. It's far worse than 2008. I don't have a problem signing my name to that. I just, my concern is who else wants to sign on to that? But I think that's where I am. They're probably not gonna, I don't know what they'll listen to, but enough's enough because we don't know where we're gonna be for our own town and our own Board of Ed, and they cannot. I know from talking to Chairman Kraut that Orange Board of Ed needs things. Obviously, they do every year, and they deserve things because they've always been cut.
Yeah,
but it's not going to happen for them if Amity pushes this through. This is a big problem for our budget, especially if they can vote and approve it themselves.
Right.
So we're almost going to need a public campaign to say, if the governor doesn't change the rules and they are allowed to approve their own budget, that's going to be another story come May.
How about Kev, a 1% increase, and also ask 100% of any surplus be returned to the towns.
I like that.
For the next 5 years. I'm not kidding. That's what listen, what are we supposed to do? Make agreements with the superintendent that we did with the last one, right? And I think everybody was here, except I don't think Pat was at the time, but I have all the data, all right? And I canvassed all of you. I came back to you with the data. I asked you to rank them. You said what you said, and we presented it back, okay? And I don't think that the current level of Amity leadership has any clue about that. And what it meant to us. To us, it was a binding deal. It wasn't like, we got a new superintendent, we got to start from scratch. No, we've been here a while. We live in this town, right? This region.
So to paraphrase PJ, and I heard Pat, I believe, agree with him, with what you said, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, we could send a letter from the Orange Board of Finance to the Amity superintendent saying we expect the budget not to exceed 1%, and any surplus is to be returned 100% to the town. Am I right?
I mean, yeah. Can you say it a little nicer than we expect, or?
Well,
How about
I'm an accountant for a reason. I'm terrible. Somebody would edit my letter. I'll let you edit it.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna ask everybody, and I'm gonna keep you here a while.
We're not letting you write it, Jim.
No, you're gonna let me hear my comments. I'll tell you that, because everybody knows the story of the partner who agreed with another partner who let him be the president. All right, because he knew they were going. Because the president said they would equally share in the profits of the company. Little did that gentleman know that the president had the authorization for spending, and therefore what the profits were, let's just say they were 5% of the revenue, and they were split, but the president was in control of the spending, and a lot of the spending basically diverted over to the president's pocket through indirect rates. Now, everybody knows that story. Here's why it's important here. end of year. According to what we just said, the end of year surplus, unless you define it precisely, one would argue is 1.950777. I think we would all agree that the end of the year surplus is not that number. It's the number I'm going to highlight in yellow and make the color blue. All right.
I know where you're going already. Yes.
You know where I'm going with this, BJ? Yeah.
Exactly what I mean.
You know what I'm saying? So it has to be very, very clear what we're talking about. In other words, if you don't budget for it, you can't spend it. You can't just say, well, we have this big bucket of money and we're going to have a new sheet of end-of-year purchases for whatever good, just reasons people think it. And therefore, our surplus turns out to be not this 3.5 million. It turns out to be the 1950. That's my concern, or a concern that I want to surface to the team.
I am not concerned with that, but that's what I agree with you. Like that's the number that we're targeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a matter of how to put it.
Well, yeah, I think you have to give them devil's in the details, right?
Yeah.
So
Here's the other thing. We're going to have to propose this to the Amity Board of Ed.
Guys, I gotta stand up.
Yeah, I know. We have to propose this to the Amity Board of Ed. They have the power here. We don't have the power to convince them of where we would like to be. So we can say whatever we want. If we don't get their buy-in, it falls on deaf ears.
Joe, there's more than one prong here. I agree with you 100%, and you and I have lived it.
I know.
Me from 2005, and both of us since you came in 2009. The power really is in the select, in my judgment. We've already, I almost feel not undercutting Jimmy by saying 0% when he has basically said cut 2 million. So I don't know if we want to decide tonight, but I know we all agree we have to decide soon.
So
what would we as a board support?
have a discussion with him, get his buy-in on things so that we're all unified.
Not even Jim. Jimmy needs to get, and I'll be happy to help, and I've already conveyed that to him, communicating information to other selectmen and their representative. For example, in Beth over in Woodbridge and Matt Giglietti. I don't know if Matt has seen this chart here. All right. I think that they would be a little surprised by that. I know I was. So all I'm saying is, I think we need to have more prongs. We need to make our decision, but we should work with others to help them. You know, and it's not just a budget thing. If there's something that's going to hurt kids, well, let's find out a way to do it without having to spend taxpayer money.
Of course.
There's other way.
John, let me, Jim, let me ask, John, how do you feel about the 1%? How do you feel that's going to affect the overall budget?
I don't know, because I'm not in tune to their budget. You know, their budget, like you said, is their budget. By law, we give them the money. They are supposed to decide how to spend it. The one thing I would comment on, I'm not so sure I'd worry about COVID costs up there, because starting July 1st, I think those costs are going to start to drop off. The other thing is, education department's got a lot more grant money than towns and cities did.
July 1st, 2020?
2021, which this budget is for.
Okay.
I mean, by then, a lot of the population should be vaccinated, and probably the people that haven't been by then are probably people that don't want to be.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't think we'll ever go back to pre-March of 2020 in some things, but I don't think you're going to be having to clean schools and clean buildings the way you're cleaning them now, or other PPE equipment and stuff like that. That would be my only.
Do you see anything? I mean, you've already brought to our attention some concerns with revenue, COVID-related revenue, right, for the town.
Oh, that's another thing we haven't mentioned at all tonight.
Right.
Now that you bring it up, state of Connecticut will be in a 2-year budget cycle starting in January, and like most states, they're in trouble. So
Yeah.
we don't know what kind of ECS money we're going to get in the future. We don't know what kind of pilot money we're going to get. We don't know what kind of town aid road money we're going to get. So throw those all into the loop too, as question marks. And if the state budget,
Sorry, go
if
ahead.
the state budget goes the way it did, what was it, 4 years ago, we'll probably vote on our budget and they still won't have a budget in Hartford.
Right.
So any numbers we put in for those could be pure estimates.
And John, that's an excellent point, because that's why Amity, the Amity board, the Amity Finance Committee, and the Amity Superintendent, and I'm not picking on Joe, are not doing their job. We've talked about these things in the past ad nauseum when we thought we were going to have the pension, the teacher's pension, this, that, and the other thing. We cut our own people. We cut Public Works, we cut the police, we cut the Orange Board of Ed, because we weren't sure. They go along as if life is just flowers and road, whatever, and they don't recognize anything. And if they do cut us in the state, and they might have to, unemployment fund. I mean, I don't know where we're coming up with all this money. I mean, thank God all these people from New York and other states are buying here and pushing our real estate up, and we're having record conveyance taxes as a state. I don't know about Orange's numbers in particular, but as a state, we have record numbers in conveyance taxes. But they're just going about their business as if we don't have to do anything. I have to change everything I do in life with my company. Everybody else does, and they don't. Every college, Kevin, God bless you, that you got to retire, but Yale, I know my cousins. I have 2 cousins that work at Boston College. It's a mess. It's a mess. You have no revenue from student housing. You have this, that, and they were the first team to opt out of playing in a bowl game. And then all these other schools, including Southern Cal and Virginia Tech, Virginia, followed, but they were the first college that said, we're not going to play in a bowl game because it's negative. It's negative money. You were, for the first time you go to a college bowl game, you actually lost money instead of got paid as a school. And it's just crazy. And everybody else has to adapt. But Amity, to me, seems to refuse to adapt.
Let me make 2 more points off of what you just said there too. Number one, you talked about our property values going up, and Mr. Brancasi's budget for 2021 is money because it's time to do reevaluations.
Already? Wow.
5 years. And then, Jim, to your point, all these surpluses here, I bet if we went back to our budgets for those years, we probably had tax increases that we probably wouldn't have had if they didn't have those surpluses.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
The words that I believe might have been said in a meeting from a first selectman, Jimmy, to the superintendent, Jen, was when the response is, well, we give you back the surplus money. Well, that may or may not be 100% true, right? Obviously, it's not 100% true.
They give us back what's defined as the surplus money at the end of the year coming from the audit.
Yeah.
Well,
That's what they give us back.
let me get to the point that ties it back to your point, John, and that is, I believe this, if I'm thinking right, and you can educate me if I'm not. This surplus money, we get it, but we've already taxed our residents.
Right.
Best we can do is throw it into our bank account or whatever we call it, right?
And we've had, because I know we've had the discussions as to how much to budget for a surplus, and we are concerned about budgeting too much. But if we were to budget a lot, it would mean a lower tax rate.
It's something that I bring up every year when you
Yeah.
look at that number, because then when that money does disappear, it's a big hole in our budget.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
theoretically,
Big hole.
what we should be doing, if we really wanted to do it correctly, we should be rebating that money back to the citizens, like a little check. I'm sure Sandra would love
Well-
that, but
yeah, maybe we could hire another person to be the. Here's one thing it does do for us in light of not sending that money back to the residents, PJ, and I'm not sure if that's viable. Maybe it's a good idea. I don't know. But here's one of the things it does. When we start getting money back that we say, hey, you're not going to spend it, you should send it all back to the towns. Having canvassed all of you 4 years ago, or whenever it was, when Chip requested it, Chip DeMay, the former superintendent, what that does is puts a bunch of money in our bank account, all right, the fund balance. And when the state starts looking at 160 towns, they start looking at data. And guess one of the pieces of data they look at? How much their fund balance. So even though, and so we're getting fund balance in a sense that we didn't, I wouldn't say want, but I would say didn't really plan for, or said another way, there could have been a better way. Don't spend this orange stuff should have never been there, right? It was only there because of unnecessary budgeting processes that led to excessive surpluses, which the only place we could put it was back in the bank.
Right.
The state looks at the bank of the different towns and they say, oh boy, Orange, you're a rich town. Well,
Give us some of that, yeah.
you know, and so you don't get the favorable, whatever it means, but it isn't favorable. And
It does hurt us there, Jim, but it does
what?
help us when we go to bond.
agreed.
So there is a little offset to that.
And there's a little offset. I agree. And we could do a calculation of the pluses and the minuses and see where it all lands. But what Jimmy said back to the superintendent was, I don't need the money he said in July. I need it when we're creating the budget that leads to the taxes of the residents. That's what it's basically.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
so I've got about another 10 minutes of battery life on my iPad.
I've got about another 10 minutes of battery power in my brain. So,
Okay, I'll propose this. I propose that we set up a meeting, and I've got a calendar in front of me. Kevin, you said next week. I guess next week would be
Christmas week.
Christmas and New Year's. You guys, I'll be happy to do whatever we agree. We should decide it's no more than 30 minutes and hold to it. And the objective of the meeting is to say, okay, we would support whatever, 1%, a 0%, a something plus all what we want to say. And if we can come to agreement, we do it as a board. Kevin writes the letter, somebody edits it, whatever, and then we ship it out. Either next week or latest the first week of January. And then we send that letter
Can we
out.
do it on the 4th?
The weekend of the first week of January?
Yes.
Okay, so somebody get out a calendar. 1, 2, 3. The 4th is Monday. So let's pick a day. Kevin, are you good with that approach? Kevin Houlihan?
Jim, I'm good. If we can't come to a consensus tonight, we want to think about it. Absolutely. I just want to get something, and I prefer it to come from the whole board and have an agreement as to what we're looking at. So, yeah, the 4th.
I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm thinking 0 or less. And I'm going to go to Zioli and ask him. And I'm going to be asking him to do actions in terms of the other selectmen. And it's nice to know it's Christmas around here, but it's a pandemic of 2020. And I think most of you have already got my Christmas card, and you already see what you saw. We gave it 1 star, right? And a T-shirt on my Christmas card. All right. So, not recommended to do a do-over this year. So we need to, if you know people on the Orange Amity Board of Education, you got to emphasize some of the things we've been talking tonight and the data that we have there. Because as Joe has mentioned, we got to use this, our board, the selectmen, in any way we can to have an influence, writing articles, communicating this data, whatever we have to do. I'm willing to do my share for sure.
Yeah, and from talking to Woodbridge and Bethany, if this actually goes to a referendum, they're going to lose, because there's people like myself and Jim, our first selectman, the first selectman of Bethany, the Board of Finance chairman in Woodbridge, that are opposed to these kind of increases, and they're fed up, frankly, and they're going to, lead a campaign against it. But the fear is the governor doesn't change it. We're still in COVID, and they get to approve their own budget, which we just can't.
Right, so that being said, Jim said 0. I think 1% with returning 100% of the surplus as we defined surplus. And I'm willing to hear any other.
Well, I don't want to have
suggestion.
January meeting right now.
Yeah, let's.
I hear what you're saying, PJ, but I think for me, I can't. If my first selectman has already said I want a 4% reduction, which is what $2 million is, he deserves the respect of me going back to him and asking him, okay, Jimmy, here's what we talked about last night. All right, I got to do what's right here all around as I see it. Let's talk, and whatever comes from that conversation, I can decide to come back on January 4th and do whatever my opinion is, but I don't want to do that right now. I hope you can understand that.
I'm comfortable with that.
I get that.
Yeah.
Okay, so John Cifarelli and Deborah Satonic, I would propose that we meet on January 4th, 7 o'clock, the same YouTube Zoom channel.
Same place.
And honestly, between now and then, guys, start talking to your neighbors, small conversations. Frankly, this is the first time in 15 years I've been doing this. I've seen this type of, and I respect it greatly, Kevin Houlihan's response that you guys have heard. And I applaud his sensitivities, because he's on the, what he does and stories he's told me scares me, really does. And I'm sure he shared some of them with all of you as well, what he sees out there.
All right, so
Done number 9, Kev?
John's very important, but the most important person is Chris Kelly to get us the Zoom link for Paul Mangillo. So we'll take care of that.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So, all right. So we're done with number 9. So number 10, to review revenue and expense reports for 11/30/20. And I'm going to turn this over to John, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's 10:12. So I'll be back in 2 minutes.
How about a biology break?
Yeah, we can do that. But yeah, I myself will be back in a couple of minutes.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, John, are you going to still hang on?
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to wait for them both to come back, or?
Well, why don't you and me? No, we'll do this. We'll just do you and me, and if anybody wants to listen, then we'll report out. I just want to tell you what I did. I took your, and if anybody's on OGAT, this would be a good learning as well. I'm opening up your file, your revenue file. Okay, and I'm going to get it at some level of seeability. That's a word. Okay. And so I'll put it at 100%. Okay, so what I did is, and at some point, what I'd like to do is train Audrey or somebody to do this on a monthly basis when we, so we have it. But because we have real property, personal property, and motor vehicle, and others, both in what I'll call regular. In other words, how I read this is we've collected 29 million odd of personal property, but we've also collected real property by credit card, 1,49490, et cetera. You see what I'm doing? What I then did is I created this little Excel thing, and I put in the budget for each of the three major categories, which add up to almost 92% of our total revenue. So these are the big hitters. And then I said, what's 50% of the budget? Because we're coming up to half year. And at 50% of the budget, it isn't that you couldn't do 50% of motor vehicle. It's just that usually we collect most of it. So there's no sense doing 50%, but we usually collect this stuff 50%. So I put in what I called regular. You can give it another name if you want, be happy to edit it. Credit card. So I took the numbers that you have in wherever it was here, okay, off the sheet. And then what I did is I stuck it in here. So I have the 29,594,048 and the 1,490,246. I just add them up. So I wanted to see how far we were in relation to this 58 million, because we're coming up to the half year. This was the 12/17 run date that you sent out with us.
Right.
And I did the same for the other ones, okay? And then what I did is I said, okay, let's add them all up, both regular and credit cards. So I'm at 38 million. So I've collected, not quite to the half year yet, but I'm not sure, you know, this one's 95, but just making sure we're over the 50% mark. Even though we weren't half year. Now we can talk about, first of all, that's just the numbers, but it's a good analysis, I think. You said, and you were really answering my question that I had down here, and that's the question of, you know, what was last year's for each category. And you had already in this meeting said something about $1 million. So we can talk about it when we get back in full thing, or you can explain it to me now. It doesn't matter. But
I could just tell you, I went to Art's report from last year that I had.
Right.
And at that time, we were 55.8% of budget at 11/30, but the collection then was 37,456. So actually, we're $1 million. We're $1 million. We've collected $1 million more than last year, which is probably an increase in taxes.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Again, I don't know. You know, I could go back. Let me see. This is the one here. If we go back to,
Somehow your collection number is a little off, though. The report I gave you says 56.2.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I'm not worried about that either. I mean,
and that skews up because the car taxes are 100% due in January.
In July.
My 56.5 is only what percentage of these three? Only these three. Okay.
Oh, okay.
See what I'm saying?
All right. So the prior.
Whereas the one you're talking about over here.
Yeah, delinquent and stuff is.
Yeah, it's small change, but there you go. You got it.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. So anyway. So, Kev, are you back?
I'm back.
Okay, so we'll just formally go through it then. Kev, what I threw together from the Excel file the PDF file on the revenue side, and this is probably the major hitter, is I took the three big ones, real property, personal property, and motor vehicle. And for some reason, we now have two categories of stuff under the actual revenue to date. So what I decided to do is that's making my mind hurt. So whenever you do that, you always create a template. So I did. So here's the three, right? Here's their budget amounts. I happen to, just do a quickie of what 50% would be, just as you get near half years. These are the numbers these numbers here that I'm gonna now make green or some other color, all right, are just numbers that I plucked off the sheet. And then I got a total. That's just Excel doing its job. And then this is Excel doing its job in terms of percent of budget, which is over here. And then what you can see from the three big ones, and you can see mostly that we're ahead of at least 50% schedule at this moment of time, 12/8/17, 53.4, 57.8, Obviously, the cars have had a big credit card gig coming in, and that's up to this point, whether or not that's high or low, regardless. And so for the budget which is 92% of our overall revenue, 67.7, all right, we already are at 38.3. So we're at 56.5 for whatever it is. That's just the math. So I've been trying to translate basically what this thing is showing us into a document where we could quickly say, oh, okay. And whatever that means implies we can talk about, but that's what I got for us. Okay.
Right.
And that's probably as much as we need to spend time on the revenue, particularly since everybody's battery's drained, whether it's personal or iPhone.
Yeah, people are going to run out in a few minutes. And the shortfall obviously is in the treasurer department where we're at 29%, and it's not going to get much better because interest rates are basically zero. So
Yeah.
that $1 million we're probably never going to see.
Yeah, I think he hasn't posted some of the interest
It
and
can't be
stuff.
zero.
You know, we've been going crazy trying to get ready for payroll. It's every week now, just about 95% of the time.
Yeah.
Which Thursdays are last pay on the old system. I'll put that out for you.
Mhm.
And then first one of the year will be on the new system.
But John, I would still probably say that income is probably not going to materialize to more than 50% of what we projected.
Probably not. But if you look in there, we got the Amity money in there, and we got the cell tower money. So we got the Yale money. So I'm not that worried about it.
No, I'm not either, because especially when the Amity money is going to be,
Yeah.
$700,000 higher.
Right.
Thankfully. Doesn't mean we want to spend it on that.
If we get lucky, we'll get the University of New Haven money.
Yeah, because the school, that's why I think it showed Yale paid, right?
Yale paid. University of New Haven, Jim has to chase down.
And they're in a tough situation right now. They're having financial issues. So
yeah. It's all the universities. The kids are home. The college kids are home taking their classes from home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're still paying upkeep on the dorms and with no revenue and everything else. Oh no.
Right. There's all that additional revenue that they're not generating. I mean, you hear it at UConn. What is about every other month they come out in the paper with their deficit up there.
So the kids aren't there, so they're not spending money on. They're not buying food. They're not doing this. There's a whole, it's a huge economy in itself. And UNH, unfortunately, because a lot of them are off campus, not only hurts UNH, which hurts us with our payment, it hurts all those businesses in West Haven, from the subway shops to everything else.
Some of the other revenues we're going to take hits too. The pool, the memberships aren't there because the pool's not open a lot of time. I think it's open now. The library's only open 4 hours a day. So, you're not generating revenue. They don't have their programs. The community center, they don't have their programs like they usually have. So, I mean, there's little pockets of revenue hits we're going to take.
Yeah.
Well, the community center, some of those other ones, we should make up on the expense side. But again, I don't know.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
No,
The expenses now, or do you want to pick at the revenue some more?
no, Jim, I'm good. If everybody's good, let's go to the expense.
Okay, good. All right. First thing we want to know is that we are looking at expense numbers that should be in the vicinity of 45-46%. If 12-17. Now everything isn't in, but from a logic point of view, if you're 4.5 months into 12, you can then, or 5.5 months into 12, you can say that's where you are. So
the first payroll of December is in there also, so that's good.
yeah,
You're
so that's
getting
be 5.5 months.
You're getting a true payroll number there.
Okay, so the first thing we want to do is go to the bottom, and I'll make it as quick as you wish. But since I shoveled snow for 3 hours the other day, and then sat down pretty tired, I'll tell you what my logic was. I was very concerned when I saw the total that we've expended so far is 53.9. So I said to myself, well, I know we're going to go here, but this concerns me, so figure it out. So here's what I figured out. I figured out there are 4 major categories that were well over, and the one right above it you see on the screen right now is debt. Had I had the time, I would have see your interest is about half that, as John says, will be paid in full in January, right? The next thing you want to do is go find the Amity and the Orange budgets, which is 2 pages up of it. Employee benefits. That was at 60%. And if you take 60% and just factor that back, because you can see some of this stuff is paid off 100%, whatever, they're at higher percentages. Sometimes they're lower numbers, so it really doesn't matter. But here's a big number, and it's paid off at 87%, that kind of stuff, okay? So when you do that, if you drag that thing back to 45%, because that's where it would be if it was a level, and it's not a level payment here, you would see that you would save benefits another 1.1 million. All right, by my calculation.
I'll give you a little good news there. In that workman's comp premium area, I believe we've paid all the premium for this year. So that 49,000 is either going to go to surplus at the end of the year, but some of it will be encumbered for the audit, for the payroll audit premium.
Okay. John, I'm looking for the next one, which would be either Amity and ABOE. So I just need to, which page is the school systems on? I'm looking for it.
They should be on the back there someplace. Orange is right.
And Amity is right behind.
Amity is also, yeah.
Okay. So it was right in front of me and I didn't see it. Violation, I don't know who to put it on. It's just great getting younger, isn't it? So anyway, you can see it's at 49%. Again, it doesn't mean that, it just means if it were 45.9, what would happen if we back that down? And if you backed it down, I got OBOE, that would save another 800,000 or 0.8 million. And then you can see that Amity is almost up to 60%. So I took the 59.8, right, that you can see right there. And I did a little hand calculation. And I calculated that if you dragged it back to 48%, 45.8%, there it is there, all right, then you would have another 2.5 million. I added those 4 numbers up and I came up with 5.5. So I then said to myself, okay, so I've kind of can justify where 5.5 million is compared to that number that we were looking at over here of having spent 34.028. Again, I'm doing rough, right? So I just said, well, how far do I have to come back to? And it came back to, I got 5.8. So it made me off by only 0.3. And so for 2 hours of analysis of going through the details, because I was tired and I didn't want to get out of the chair, all right, sipping coffee or something. And then I came up with a justification that says, okay, I can sleep at night and talk on Monday and let people know that that's at least one analysis that somebody did. And I'll be happy to, and I had a bunch of questions, but I don't think at this 10:29 at night, it might be a good time to ask them all or any of them. But that's what I found out on a macro level.
Where is the mailbox replacement line item? Because
No matter,
mailbox was-
you don't read the paper. They don't replace residents'
I know.
mailboxes.
My mailbox was absolutely obliterated.
Was it?
There's a lot of them, BJ, in town with this last storm. I was
You
shocked
did-
at how many I saw.
You didn't listen to the first selectman who told you to put up that plywood board.
I will. I'm gonna.
We're gonna have a PJ $25 mailbox challenge on a GoFundMe.
Go for a page.
You'll end up raising $75.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. A 3-for-1. That's what I've been doing with that. That's my standard. So I'm good as far as this.
I am good as well.
Anybody have any other questions on the expense or revenue reports for John?
No, I feel like we started this meeting in September.
I think you're right.
We did.
Happens when you miss 2 months.
You know, one of the things is if you haven't noticed, our Zoom meetings are probably 3 times as long as our normal meetings.
Well, let's go back to the normal ones then.
Yeah.
Got my vote.
We would all love that.
Well, there's reasons for that. We're in our comforts of our own home, and whatever creature comforts we can provide for ourselves while we do that, that might make it a little bit more better.
You guys are in the comfort of your own home. I'm sitting at my desk.
So am I. You can look behind
I
me.
thought you lived there.
Hey, I'm more, you know.
All right. That was item 10.
But we're more productive. So item 11. So we will schedule a meeting. We'll send out an email, John, about having a Zoom meeting Monday, January 4th to talk about
Does that
Amity.
work for everybody?
Yep,
That's
good.
And the objective of the meeting is to discuss and come to agreement as a board on the budget level, I'll say, rather than increase, budget level that we can support for Amity for fiscal year 21-22.
Sounds
Yes.
good. Yep.
And between now and then, we have to talk to, and God bless America, and we'll see.
And then by then we'll be able to read the full stimulus act that they may or may not have passed tonight.
I think they did.
So we'll see what's in that.
Well, the
That could help
House
us.
has.
So, okay, so item 11, adjournment. DJ?
PJ.
I'll second it.
Yeah. I make
I'm
a
in
long
favor.
overdue motion to
Third.
adjourn this meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And,
Thank you.
Kevin,
This is
thank
like
you.
a Scorsese movie.
Happy holidays, Merry
Have
Christmas.
wonderful
Happy
Yes.
Hanukkah. We'll
Yeah.
Have a nice
see you
Christmas,
on
everybody.
January 4th. Happy New Year.
Yes.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Merry
And I wanna
Christmas,
thank
happy holidays,
everybody.
everybody.
Merry
For
Christmas,
their-
happy holidays. Yep.
For their
Take care.
persistence in dealing with a challenging topic, an incredibly important topic, and at a time where we really didn't have an option not to address it. So I think this board hung in awful tough in that regard. And thank you, Kevin, particularly for your leadership in surfacing what you did prior to this meeting. So to all of us, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak in favor of the application? Anybody wish to speak against the application? Anybody wish to speak? All right. Haven't heard that. I make a motion, or is there a motion to close the public aspect of this hearing?
Make a motion.
Pat has made the motion. Do you second the motion? Greg
I'll
has seconded the
second.
motion?
I could second the motion, yes.
Greg has seconded. All right. So, we approved it once before. In delay, it doesn't seem. Brad shared the hardship existed back then. It still exists. Nothing's changed. Anybody have any thoughts or comments?
Just gonna ask Jack a quick question.